I'd saved up for 2 years to take my first solo trip at 24. I wanted adventure and something different. So I picked Brazil because I'd always been obsessed with the rainforests and beaches. I flew into Sao Paulo in July. My second night there, I was at this beach bar in Guarujá, drinking caipirinhas and watching the sunset. That's when Paul sat down next to me. He was Australian and in his late 20s. He was slightly tan and good-looking in that backpacker way. He started chatting me up and asked me where I was from and what brought me to Brazil. He seemed nice and funny. He said he'd been traveling South America for 6 months and knew all the best spots, including the hidden beaches tourists never found. Some of them have the best authentic food. We spent the evening together and walked along the beach. He showed me this amazing seafood place where they barely spoke English and made me feel like I was experiencing the real Brazil. When we said goodbye, he asked if I wanted to do something special the next day.
Like what?
Check out the heart of Brazil? I have contacts and can sort you with an exclusive boat trip to a mysterious island that's rarely visited by the public. Fair dinkum. I should have been suspicious, but I was 24 and stupid, and thought this was exactly the kind of adventure I'd come for. The next morning, I met him at the shore like we'd planned, but the moment I saw the setup, the smile on my face vanished. Paul was standing next to this rough-looking local guy who looked to be in his 50s. He was covered in tattoos, and instead of a boat tour, it was a beat-up fishing vessel that barely looked seaworthy. "This is Miguel," Paul waved. "Our sailor for the day."
I thought you said it was an exclusive tour.
It is. That's why we need Miguel's boat. The island isn't on any official tours, so proper transport ain't available. Every instinct told me to leave, but Paul was already climbing aboard, smiling and holding out his hand to help me up. I climbed in, and the boat pulled away from shore. While Paul wouldn't stop chattering, Miguel minded his business mostly and kept steering. Paul kept pointing out landmarks and talking about the coastline, but we kept going farther and farther from land. The beaches disappeared until there was just the ocean.
Where are we going exactly?
Paul grinned and pointed at a small rocky island rising out of the water. Ilha da Queimada Grande. Never heard of it? My stomach dropped.
Snake Island?
You know it! He clapped, excited. Pretty cool, right? Most dangerous island in the world. It has thousands of golden lancehead vipers, some of the deadliest snakes in Brazil.
It's illegal to go there. The Brazilian Navy...
Patrols are rare. We'll be fine, Cat. He put his arm around me. I tried to move away, but he held tighter. The boat stopped maybe 50 yards from the island, close enough to get a good look at the thick jungle and rocky shore. I'd read up on this place online. The stories all mentioned a crazy amount of snakes, like 1 per square yard, with venom so strong it'll make you bleed inside, shut down your kidneys, and kill you in just a few hours.
We should go back.
Relax. Paul smirked. His eyes were glued to my face as he stepped closer. Hey, Catherine, how would you feel if we never returned?
What?
He guffawed as if he'd just heard the funniest joke, while my heart hammered in my chest. Just kidding. Oh, but seriously, you're pretty far from home and nobody knows you're here.
Take me back. Now.
Not till I'm done. With that, he grabbed my face and tried smooching me. I shoved him away and slapped him hard. His expression darkened instantly. The smile vanished and his eyes went cold. Big fucking mistake. He grabbed my shoulders and I totally freaked out, trying to get away, but he was way too strong. Paul shoved me so hard that I flipped right over the side into the super cold, salty water. Miguel didn't even blink. I finally popped back up, coughing and sputtering.
Help! Please!
The boat was already moving and pulling away. Paul was leaning over the side. Good luck with the snakes! I tried to swim after them, but couldn't. The current was too strong. As the boat disappeared, I turned toward the island. It was 40 yards away and covered in snakes. I couldn't swim there because I'd die either way. The waves kept pushing me under, but I kept fighting. My arms burned, and I'd swallowed an insane amount of water. Suddenly, I heard the humming of an engine that was different from Miguel's boat. I pushed myself up and caught a Navy patrol boat with a Brazilian flag. I splashed harder until one of them noticed me. By the time they pulled me out, I was shaking so hard I couldn't talk. Still, I pointed at the island and at where Paul's boat had gone. They searched for hours and found nothing. Paul and Miguel had vanished. The patrol officer took me back to shore and called the police. I gave them everything I remembered. The Brazilian police searched and found the bar and witnesses who'd seen us together. But Paul was gone. He probably used a fake name and a fake ID. The authorities think he'd done this before. I flew home the next day. I couldn't stay in Brazil and couldn't even look at the ocean. I'm 25 now and still in Toronto. I haven't traveled since and can't bring myself to trust anyone. Sometimes, I think about how close I came to dying. I was just 40 yards from the most dangerous island in the world. If that patrol hadn't showed up, I would have drowned, or made it to shore and gotten bitten. Either way, I'd be dead. And Paul would have gotten away with it. I wonder how many others there were, and how many women didn't get lucky like I did. How many bodies are at the bottom of that ocean, or worse, on that island feeding the snakes? I'm a tech sales guy from Portland, Oregon, and I'm on the road a lot, driving between different towns. This night was supposed to be totally standard. I was heading back from a client meeting up in the hills outside the city, and figured I'd take the scenic route, which could actually shave off 10 minutes. The fog started rolling in at around 8 or 9. Before long, it got so thick that my high beams were completely useless, and all I could see was this huge white wall in front of my car. I had to drop down to 20 miles an hour, but I still couldn't make out the damn road. If it wasn't enough, my GPS cut out totally as well. I kept driving anyway, thinking maybe I'd reach a safe location, but when the road started looking weird, with turns I didn't recognize and no mile markers or signs, I pulled over. I checked my phone. I only had one bar and 0 data. I tried calling my girlfriend, but it wouldn't go through. Google Maps was a bust too. I sat there for maybe half an hour, waiting for a car or anything to drive by. Finally, I had to pee super bad. So I got out and went into the woods a little way off the road. I found a tree and started going. All of a sudden, I heard digging, with metal hitting dirt in a rhythm close by. I zipped up and moved toward the sound. Through the fog, I saw a man, maybe 40 yards away, digging a pit that was deep and already waist level. Next to the hole was a sack that was big and heavy looking, with dark stains on the fabric. My blood went cold. I ducked behind a cluster of trees and watched. The guy scrambled out of the hole and headed straight for the sack. He grunted while he hauled it to the edge. The sack dropped into the pit with a wet thud, and dark liquid started oozing out. The guy stood there for a second, staring into the hole, wiping his hands with his jeans. Suddenly, he stiffened and slowly turned his head to stare right where I was hiding. I instantly dropped flat onto the ground behind a bush and held my breath. I could hear slow footsteps coming toward me through the leaves and the fog. He stopped some 10 feet away from me. I could hear him breathing hard. My heart was pounding so loud I was scared he would hear it too. "I know someone's watching me," he grumbled, scanning the surroundings. I covered my mouth and prayed he wouldn't see me. A few minutes passed by, and when he didn't find anything, he retreated towards the hole. I waited another 5 minutes, trying to hear his movements. He was back to digging, covering up the hole. So, I slowly backed away, crawling through the bushes. I didn't stand up until I couldn't hear the digging anymore. Then, I totally booked it back towards my car. I burst through the fog, ignoring the branches scraping my face. I was only a couple of feet away from my door handle, when my eyes caught the figure sitting in the back. My whole body froze. Slowly, the rear window hummed down, revealing a blood-covered hand gripping a long, serrated hunting knife. "Going somewhere?" he asked, opening the door. He strolled out like he had all the time in the world. He started humming a tune as he dragged the knife right down the side of my car door. Suddenly, he looked over, grinned at me, and bolted. I screamed and ran around the car. I yanked the driver's door open, jumped in, and hit the locks with all of them clicking shut. He slammed into the door and tried the handle. He pounded on the window with his face pressed against the glass. I fumbled for my keys, but my hands were shaking so bad I dropped them. The man then jumped onto the hood, raised the knife, and brought it down on the windshield. My whole body started trembling as a spiderweb spread across the glass. He did it again and again. The windshield was fracturing and about to give. Somehow, my instincts kicked in. I picked them up and got them in the ignition. I slammed the car into drive and hit the gas. The man fell and rolled off the hood onto the road. I saw him in the rearview mirror getting up, covered in dirt and blood, still holding that knife. I drove as fast as I could through the fog. It didn't matter if I knew where I was going. I only wanted to be away from him. Eventually, I found a main road, then another. Soon, familiar streets appeared. It took me 2 hours to get home. I was shaking the whole time and kept checking the rearview mirror to make sure he wasn't following. I called the police from my apartment and told them everything. They took my statement and asked for the location. I couldn't tell them. I didn't know where I'd been or the road name. I could only tell them it was somewhere in the hills. They searched and sent units to comb the hill roads, but found nothing. My car had the knife marks, the cracked windshield, and blood smears on the back door handle, so they knew something had happened. But without a location, they couldn't do much. The case went nowhere. No missing person reports matched the time frame, and no bodies were found. I'm 27 now and still in Portland. I have moved to a new apartment and got a new car, but I try to avoid driving at night, especially not in the hills and fog, because I know he's still out there, maybe burying more bodies, including people who stumble onto it. And I know if I ever saw him again, I wouldn't be as lucky and may even end up in one of those sacks he had buried. I moved to Chicago about 6 months ago, after finally walking away from my super toxic 3-year marriage. The whole divorce was a complete disaster. My ex, Derek, tried every trick in the book to keep tabs on me. He showed up at my job and actually followed my car. After the nightmare I'd been through, I seriously needed a fresh start to pull my life back together. That Friday night, I hit up this club downtown with a few friends from work. After a few drinks, my boss dragged me to the floor, and I started swaying to the music. I was laughing, trying to have a normal life for once. It felt so damn good to be out and feel totally free, not having to answer to anybody. But the whole time, I had this weird, creepy feeling, like someone was watching me. I kept looking all around the club, checking faces, but I didn't spot anyone I knew or anyone from my past. I just figured I was being paranoid. It was the old habits from the marriage, I guess. Around 1 in the morning, I took an Uber home. I was tired and a little tipsy. After kicking off my heels and securing the door chain, I was preparing for bed when a soft knock interrupted my preparation. My stomach dropped. Nobody should be knocking at 1 in the morning. I walked quietly to the peephole, looked through, and froze. Derek was standing outside with a half-finished bottle in his hand. I hadn't seen him in 6 months. His eyes were bloodshot and puffy, and his hair was messy. He looked like he hadn't slept in days. He was staring straight at my door. I backed away without making a sound. My heart started pounding. How did he find my apartment? "Open up, Lena. I know you in there," Derek said through the door. His voice was tight and controlled, like he was forcing himself to stay calm. "I saw you at the club tonight. He is your boss, isn't he? I felt sick. He'd been there, watching me the whole time. That feeling I had all night wasn't paranoia. It was real.
I'm not opening the door. You need to leave, right now.
Damn right I would. You were practically crawling all over him. Derek sneered, giggling like some crazy teenager. How much is he paying you to hook up? That's your entire job profile, isn't it?
Go away, Derek, or I'm calling the police.
Call the military for all I care. Nobody would save you. I saw you with my own eyes. You think I'm stupid? You think I don't know what you've been doing behind my back? His tone was spiraling, going from that forced control to completely erratic. I could hear him breathing hard on the other side of the door. My hands were shaking as I grabbed my phone and called 911. When the operator answered, I made sure my voice was loud enough for Derek to hear. But he didn't back off. Instead, he hurled the half-finished bottle at the door, smashing it into pieces before he started hammering the door so hard, I seriously thought it had come off the hinges. Let me in! I'll freaking show you! All of a sudden, he stopped banging and started laughing like a maniac. Right after that, he started bawling. Why did you leave me, Lena? I loved you so much. I gave you everything I had. Why wasn't I enough for you? Then he was back to yelling again, totally screaming crazy stuff. He'd say sorry and then immediately call me a whore. He'd beg me to open up and then threaten to smash my head with a hammer. I could hear my neighbors opening their doors and asking what was going on and telling Derek he needed to leave. Derek ignored all of them and kept ranting at my door. Right then, a siren wailed in the distance and got closer. Footsteps running up the stairs and voices in the hallway told Derek to step back, calm down, and put his hands behind his back now. I looked through the peephole again. 2 officers were restraining Derek. He was resisting, but weakly, like he didn't really care anymore. And the whole time they were putting handcuffs on him, he was smiling and staring at my door, where he knew I was watching. His smile made me feel sick. One of the officers knocked on my door and identified himself. I opened it with the chain still on. He asked if I was okay and if Derek had hurt me. I said no, and he never got inside. The officer said they were arresting him for disorderly conduct and harassment, and asked if I wanted to press charges. I said yes. They took Derek away, but he kept looking back at me, still smiling and staring, even as they put him in the police car. I locked the door and put a chair against it, even though I knew Derek was gone. The next morning, I went to the courthouse and filed for a restraining order. Derek was released on bail that same day. The restraining order requires him to stay at least 500 feet away from me, but I know it's just a piece of paper, and 500 feet won't ever be enough. It's been a couple of months now, and I've changed states again. I don't go out anymore. I changed numbers and kept a distance from my old friends so he doesn't know where I live and work. Because that night taught me that Derek isn't going to stop. He's obsessed, and a restraining order won't protect me if he decides paper doesn't matter anymore. Bernie was my favorite cousin, because he was the only one who didn't treat me like a baby at 11. So, when he said we should prank our parents on April Fool's Day, I didn't even need convincing. Bernie's pranks were always the best. Last year, he'd put plastic wrap under the toilet seat, and his dad fell for it. We laughed about that for months. This time, we were keeping it simple. My uncle's farm had this massive corn maze that they opened every October. In April, the corn was already 8 feet tall. Bernie said we'd sneak out, hide in the maze, and watch our parents freak out. They'll be running around, screaming our names like idiots, he said, giggling. That evening, when our folks were laughing, having dinner and wine, Bernie grabbed my arm and whispered it was time. We slipped out the back and ran across the field, giggling. The maze entrance was maybe 200 yards away, far enough they wouldn't hear us. It was the weird time right before it got dark, when everything looked gray. The corn was rustling in the wind, and the maze was bigger than I remembered. The paths were narrow, and the stalks were towering over us. We turned left, right, and left again. Bernie kept saying we needed to go deeper. Around the next turn, I got a pebble in my shoe, digging into my heel. I was hopping on one foot when I heard the rustle. My heartbeat picked up. I stopped hopping and listened.
Hear that?
I asked Bernie. He too stopped and listened to the soft padding of footsteps coming from somewhere behind us in the maze. Probably just a farm worker, Grace. Bernie shrugged.
Come on, let's hide and scare whoever it is.
We ducked around a corner and mashed ourselves against the corn. The stalks were rough and scratchy, smelling like dirt and fertilizer. The footsteps got closer. They sounded slow and dragging, like the person was either hurt or wasted. When they got really close, Bernie gave me a thumbs up as we waited. Suddenly, a guy rounded the corner and stopped only a few feet away. He was really tall, maybe as tall as my dad, and had on this dirty flannel shirt. His gray hair was sticking up all over the place, and he was carrying a huge machete that I remembered seeing once in a jungle movie. Bernie and I gulped as he peered at the field without saying anything. He looked down the path before his head slowly turned, and he stared right at us. I screamed as Bernie grabbed my hand, and we took off. I could still hear the guy's boots scraping the dirt behind us, mingled with a ripping sound, as if he was slicing through the corn. We kept turning corners, and Bernie kept yanking me all the way. Suddenly, my shoe flew off, but Bernie didn't let me slow down. Behind us, the ripping got way louder. He was maybe 20 feet back.
Come on, Grace!
Bernie yelled, yanking my arm. We hit a dead end with a wall of corn. We spun around, and the man was right there, blocking us in. He lifted the machete.
Go through the corn!
Bernie shoved me toward the wall.
Push through!
I started clawing at the stalks. They were super thick and cut my hands, but I kept pushing until I made a gap.
Come on, Bernie!
I yelled, trying to hold the stalks open. Bernie was reaching. His hand almost touched mine. Just then, the man grabbed Bernie's shirt and yanked him back. Bernie screamed in a way I'd never heard him before. Our fingers touched before the maze consumed him. I heard the machete and wet chopping sounds. Bernie was screaming for help. I pushed through the corn until I hit another path. I kept running and taking turns without even thinking. My bare foot was bleeding. I could still hear those slow footsteps behind me, like he knew I'd get tired eventually. Suddenly, I saw the farmhouse lights through the corn, and I sprinted toward them. My mom found me maybe 10 minutes later, calling my name. She sounded annoyed until she saw me. I was covered in scratches, missing a shoe, and couldn't stop crying. She asked where Bernie was, and I just pointed at the maze. All the adults went in with their flashlights, yelling Bernie's name. Uncle Rob had a baseball bat. They were in there for over an hour. Still, came out with nothing. The cops showed up around midnight. They brought dogs and searched the whole maze with these huge spotlights. They found Bernie's backpack near the dead end. His phone was in it. They also found 4 fingers lying in the dirt nearby. They never found the rest of him. They couldn't find that man either. My uncle said there weren't any workers on the farm that day. I told the police everything. They searched everywhere, but nobody in the town had heard anything about Bernie. My uncle shut the maze down. He plowed the whole thing under 2 weeks later. Bernie's still missing. The case is still open. They have his fingers in evidence, and that's all they have of him. It has been nearly 5 years since that April Fool's Day. I still have nightmares about Bernie's hand reaching for me, about that wet chopping sound. My therapist says I have PTSD, says I was just a kid and there was nothing I could have done. But she didn't see Bernie's face when that man grabbed her, didn't hear him scream my name. Sometimes I wonder if the man's still out there, waiting in some other corn maze on some other farm, looking for kids who think pranks are funny. I was scrolling through apartment listings for the 5th time that week, getting more desperate with each refresh. My lease was up in 10 days, and I'd been turned down by almost every place I could actually afford. That's when Suzanne's listing popped up. She was out to share her apartment. That's master bedroom she already occupied. I texted her, and she told me she just wanted a roommate who wouldn't vacate in 2 months and paid on time. I wanted something longer term, too. It sounded like a deal. We exchanged maybe 10 messages before I agreed to move in. When I showed up, an old woman answered the door, flashing her dentures. She looked maybe 70. Her gray hair was pulled back in a messy bun, and she was donning a cardigan that looked like the dirtiest fabric in the room.
Oh, you must be Mark. I'm Kathy, Suzanne's grandmother. She's at work, but said to make yourself at home. I'm just staying for the summer.
Inside, the apartment looked like the photos, except everything seemed older and more worn out. The grandmother followed me to my room, prodding me with weird questions until I answered them.
How long have you been living alone, Mark? Where's your family?
I've been out of the home since I turned 18? Father prefers the countryside.
Great. You got a wife or girlfriend who'd show up?
No, ma'am.
Very well.
She flashed me a cheeky grin that made my skin itch, like she was pleased with the answers. The room was small with a bed, a desk, and a dresser, and along the mantel, above a blocked-off fireplace, sat a row of stuffed animals facing the bed.
Don't touch those.
The grandmother said from the doorway.
They're family heirlooms. Suzanne's quite particular about them.
I told her I wouldn't. She stood there watching me unpack for another minute before finally leaving. I heard her go into what I assumed was Suzanne's room and close the door. I didn't meet Suzanne that night, or the next day, or the day after that. Her bedroom door stayed closed the whole time. When I asked when she'd be home, Kathy said she was on an office trip and would be back in a week or so. But the old lady was always there, in the kitchen or living room, asking invasive questions. She kept bringing up how nice it was to have a man in the apartment again, and how lonely it had been. One night, I was working late on an urgent project involving too many files that were scattered all over my bed. I needed more space, so I moved to clear off the mantel above the fireplace. That's when I noticed something strange about the stuffed animal sitting there. In the dim light from my desk lamp, I could see faint red dots inside their eyes like tiny pinpricks of light. I picked up the teddy bear closest to me, turned it over, and noticed a small lens embedded in its eye socket. I checked the others and found that every single stuffed animal had a hidden camera inside them. They were all pointed directly at my bed. My stomach dropped. I looked around the room, wondering how long they'd been recording and what they'd seen. I started packing immediately. I wasn't going to spend another second in that room or that apartment. I'd sleep in my car if I had to. I was bent over my duffel bag when something heavy smashed into the back of my head. The impact sent me forward onto my knees, and my vision exploded with white stars. I touched the back of my skull, and my fingers came away wet with blood. I turned around, and Kathy was standing behind me, holding a ceramic vase. Before I could react, she swung again. This time, it hit my nose. I heard the crunch before pain exploded. Blood poured down my face and into my mouth. I fell backward onto my ass, clutching my face, unable to see straight. She was laughing and sobbing at the same time.
How dare you? Didn't I tell you not to touch those?
I tried to crawl backward, but my head was spinning. She stepped closer, still holding the vase.
You think you can come and go on a whim? You men are all selfish monsters. You can happily live with a woman who shows off her shiny flesh, but disappear the moment her skin wrinkles? There's no Suzanne, Mark. There has never been one. I made it all up to have you. You can't leave!
She screamed. She raised the vase above her head for another swing, but by the time I had regained my senses, I reached for her ankle and yanked as hard as I could. She lost her balance and stumbled sideways into the dresser. The vase fell from her hands and shattered on the floor. I scrambled to my feet. My nose was throbbing, and the blood had soaked my shirt. White spots danced across my vision, and I could barely see the doorway, but I ran for it anyway. Behind me, Kathy was screaming at me to stop. I made it out of the apartment and burst out onto the street. I saw an older man walking his dog.
Help, please! Call 911!
He pulled out his phone immediately. The police arrived within minutes. I told them everything while an EMT cleaned the blood off my face. They went up to the apartment and found her sitting on my bed, surrounded by the stuffed animals. She didn't resist. The officers found many cameras and hard drives full of footage. They charged her with assault and voyeurism. She was declared mentally unfit to stand trial and committed to a psychiatric facility. It has been months, and I'm mostly healed. The attack had made my nose slightly crooked. I can feel the bump when I touch it. It's a reminder of the horror I lived and survived. I live alone in a studio apartment that costs more than I can afford, but I know every inch of it. I checked for cameras the day I moved in, and I checked every few months after. Because I know that loneliness can turn people into monsters, that the people you're talking to online might not exist, and a whole life can be fabricated just to trick you into walking through a door you'll regret opening. I wonder what would have happened if she'd hit me harder, if I hadn't grabbed her ankle in time. I'm grateful I never had to find out. I live in Bakersfield, California. It's a small city off Highway 99, where nothing interesting ever happens, which is why what went down at that McDonald's still messes with my head. It was late March. My buddy Samson and I were driving back from Fresno after visiting his sister. Around 11:30 p.m., we got hungry. Samson is the kind of guy who can't go more than 3 hours without eating or he gets cranky. So, when we saw the golden arches of McDonald's glowing off the highway, he made me pull in. The parking lot was empty, except for our car and another beat-up Honda near the dumpsters. The drive-thru was still open, though. I pulled up to the speaker, but couldn't hear a presence. "Hello?" Samson leaned over me. "Anyone there?" We got static as a reply, before running footsteps echoed. A second later, the drive-thru window slid open, and this guy in his mid-30s appeared. He was slightly out of breath and sweating like crazy, even though it was maybe 50 degrees out. His McDonald's uniform was wrinkled. His name tag said he was Derek. Sorry, I was taking out the trash." He panted, wiping his forehead with his sleeve. "What do you want? Please keep it short, I'm about to close." Something felt off. 2 Big Macs, large fries, and a strawberry smoothie," Samson said. Derek nodded and disappeared from the window. I looked at Samson. Dude's in a mood. Yeah, probably hates his job. Samson was scrolling through his phone. Through the window, I could see Derek moving around. He was frantically grabbing bags and throwing food together. My eyes fell on his apron. "Samson." I nudged him. "Look at that guy's apron." Samson glanced up, also noticing the dark red stains splattered over the front, as if someone had thrown ketchup at him. Ugh, probably spilled something. But Derek kept wiping his hands on it, which somehow made it worse. His hands were shaking. He came back to the window and shoved 2 bags at us. "Here, that's everything." He was already closing the window before I could even hand cash to him. I drove off, but something in my gut felt wrong. I kept remembering his face and the way he couldn't wait to get rid of us. 10 minutes down the highway, Samson started digging through the bags. "Yo, where's my smoothie?" "What?" "My strawberry smoothie, it's not here." He was checking both bags. "Dude forgot it." I sighed. "You want me to go back?" "I mean, why not? We paid for it. The least he can do is give us our full order." I took the next exit and looped back. The McDonald's was still lit up when we pulled in, but the drive-thru window was dark now, with the close sign shining in the glass. "Are you serious?" Samson got out of the car and walked up to the front doors. It was locked. "Forget it," I said. "Let's just go." "Nah, that guy's probably still here. His car's right there." Samson pointed at the beat-up Honda. "Come on." He started walking around the building toward the back, and I followed him because I wasn't about to let him go alone. The back of the McDonald's smelled like grease and rotting food. There was an industrial dumpster and a metal door with a dim light above it. Samson was about to knock when my eyes fell on the legs sticking out of the dumpster. "Samson!" I choked with much effort. My heartbeats had picked up, and my breathing got uneven. He turned and followed my eyes. What the? We managed to get to it, and I nearly passed out. The legs were bare with raw, shredded muscle, slick with blood, hanging in strips. We could see the jagged white shards of bone piercing through the mess. Samson grabbed the edge of the dumpster and pulled himself up to look inside. He stumbled back a second later, gagging.
Don't look,
He said, but I already was. The body was face down, or what was left of a face. It was badly mutilated and hacked apart. The arms were twisted at the wrong angles. The stench hit me, and I tripped backward before I emptied my stomach in the parking lot. Samson was on his phone. His hands were shaking so bad he kept dropping it. When he finally got through to 911, he told them what we found. We waited by my car until we heard sirens. When they showed up, they roped off the whole area and recorded our statements. The detective asked if we'd seen anyone. The employee, I said. Derek, he was here like 20 minutes ago. Gave us our food through the drive-thru. The detective's face changed.
what did he look like?
I described him and everything else I'd noticed.
Those weren't ketchup stains.
The detective said quietly. They searched the building. Derek was gone. His car was still there, but he'd run. They'd found blood in the kitchen and bloody handprints on the back door. The body in the dumpster was identified as a 23-year-old Marcus Williams who worked the evening shift with Derek. They think Derek killed him during closing, some kind of argument that went bad. Then we panicked when we showed up at the drive-thru. Derek Turner was arrested 3 days later, found hiding at his ex-girlfriend's place 2 towns over, and still had Marcus's blood on his shoes. It's been a year. I still can't drive past a McDonald's without seeing those legs or remembering Derek's face through that window. Samson moved to Oregon 6 months ago. He said Bakersfield had too many bad memories. Can't say I blame him. Sometimes I think about how close we came to just driving away, to forget about that smoothie. And I wonder if Marcus would have been found sooner, or if Derek would have gotten away with it. But mostly, I just think about how we ordered burgers from a guy who just murdered his coworker, how he handed us food with hands that still had blood on them, and how I almost didn't notice. I'm Nathan from Olympia, Washington, and this happened when I was 11, so like 5 years ago, but I still remember everything like it was yesterday. It was summer, and I spent all afternoon at the park near my house. My mom let me go by myself because she could literally see the park from our kitchen window. I was on the swings and climbing stuff with 2 other kids from my neighborhood. Around 5, I bid them goodbye and started walking home. Along the way, I got a chocolate ice cream with rainbow sprinkles from the truck. I was walking and eating it, being happy about life, until suddenly, the clouds burst and started pouring like crazy. Within seconds, I got completely soaked through. I ducked under this huge cedar tree and stood there, watching my ice cream turn to soup. The rain was drumming hard against the leaves above me. Suddenly, my eyes fell on this woman across the street who was standing out there in the downpour without any cover. The weird thing was, she wasn't trying to get dry or anything. I wiped my face and looked closer. Her hair was all wet and stuck to her face. Her clothes were drenched and sticking to her body in this really weird way. And she wasn't shivering, even when the rain could really crush any other soul in her place. As I blinked, our eyes met, and she flashed me this unusually wide smile that showed me the whole inside of her mouth. I gulped and looked away because it was freaking me out, and tried to focus on my ice cream instead. I told myself she was just some random lady, and it was fine. When I looked back, she had vanished. I looked around but couldn't see her anywhere. Suddenly, I saw her peeking out from behind a tree. I couldn't see her body, but her head was dangling out, and she was still smiling. I took a step back, and she ducked behind the tree, only to peek out again like we were 2 friends playing peekaboo. My skin crawled, and my heart started pounding. She kept hiding and peeking out. She'd hide behind one tree, and then the next time she'd be behind another that was closer to me. I was so scared I couldn't even move. Suddenly, she was behind the tree right next to mine. So close I could have touched her if I wanted to. My body started trembling. The thunder rumbled overhead. She leaned out and looked at me. Water was pouring off her, and I could see her eyes where hollow sockets stared back.
Do you want to see a magic trick?
She giggled. I screamed, threw my ice cream at her face, and bolted, even though I could hardly see past my own footsteps. I ran for a really long time. My shoes kept slipping on the wet ground, and my clothes were so heavy that it was an effort to drag them. Finally, I had to stop because I couldn't breathe anymore. I stood under another tree and tried to catch my breath while looking around, trying to see if she followed me. And she was there, standing across the road again, in the same exact spot where she was earlier.
Do you still want to see a magic trick?
She yelled, smiling at me. I shook my head and backed away from her. "No, leave me alone!" I sobbed. She put her hands on her face and grabbed her jaw. I watched horrified as she started pulling and stretching her mouth wider and wider until her mouth ripped open. She tore it all the way back to her ears. I could see the skin tearing, and there was a ton of blood pouring out, mixing with the rain and running down her body. Through all of this, she kept laughing with this horrible gurgling sound. I screamed, cupping my eyes with my palms. I watched her creep closer, playing with her jaw before everything went black. When I woke up, I was on the ground in the mud. This older guy was standing over me, looking really worried. "Kid, are you okay? Can you hear me?" he was saying. I sat up and looked around. The rain had stopped, and everything was quiet with just puddles everywhere. "What happened?" "You tell me. I found you passed out here. Give me your parents' number, I'm gonna call them." My mom came and got me. She was crying because she was so scared. The guy told her where he found me, which was 2 blocks from the park. They took me home, got me into dry clothes and put me in bed, but that night, I got a really bad fever. I was seeing things because of it. I kept seeing that woman and her torn mouth and hearing her laugh over and over. The fever lasted for a whole week. My mom took me to the doctor twice, but they said it was just a virus and to give it time, and I'd get better. Eventually, the fever went away, and I did get better, but I never told anyone what I really saw. I mean, who would believe me? I was 11, and they just think I made it up or hallucinated or something. I'm 16 now and still live in Olympia, but I don't go to that park anymore. I don't walk on those streets, and when it rains really hard, I stay inside no matter what. Because when it's raining, I'll look out the window and she'll be standing across the street with water pouring down on her, smiling. And I know if I look at her for too long, she'll start playing that game again, hiding behind trees and peeking out, getting closer and closer until she's right next to me, asking if I want to see her magic trick. And I really don't want to know what happens if I say yes. Olivia and I had moved out to Boulder, Colorado, trying one last time to save our train wreck of a marriage. It was Olivia's idea. She said living in a new place, surrounded by mountains and calm, would give us a fresh start. But the train had already derailed, and no matter how hard we tried, it kept derailing for the worse. Even in Boulder, we were always constantly fighting about something or other. The final straw went down in March, right after I got back from work. A little tiff blew up into a full-on nightmare fight. She was crying and I was yelling. The insults, they were nasty. She called me a selfish jerk, and I shot back with crazy. The whole thing totally wrecked us.
I'm over it. I can't take this crap anymore.
With the last word, she grabbed her keys and bailed. "Fine, leave. See if I care." She slammed the door so hard that a picture frame fell off the wall. I heard her car start and listened to the tires screech as she peeled out. I figured she'd be back, same as always, after spending a night at her sister's to chill out, ready to hash things out in the morning. But she never showed up. The next day, my call went straight to her voicemail. I texted her and got nothing. When I called her sister, I found out Olivia wasn't even there and hadn't been. By day 3, I was getting worried and filed a missing person report. The cops didn't seem too concerned though. They said couples fight and she probably just needed space, and told me to check back in a week. On the 5th night, I came home to a small plain cardboard box sitting on my doorstep. My name was scribbled on it with a black marker, and there was no return address. I grabbed it and took it inside. When I finally popped the box open, I got hit with a wave of major dread and panic. Inside was a lock of long, dark brown hair, definitely Olivia's. They were completely soaked in a sticky red mess that looked like blood. My hands started shaking, and I called the police immediately. When I showed them the box, they took it for evidence and started treating Olivia's disappearance more seriously. 2 days later, another package arrived. This one was bigger and heavier. I didn't want to open it, so the detective did. His face went white as a sheet as he pulled out a finger, severed clean at the knuckle, and wearing a silver band with a small diamond that I knew too well. I'd slid it on Olivia's finger on our wedding day. I threw up right there on the porch. The detective called for backup. Over the next week, more packages kept coming. Each one was more messed up than the last. I'd gotten a piece of torn clothing, a bloodied earring I knew, just a non-stop nightmare getting worse and worse. The police started looking at me differently and asked me pointed questions. Where was I the night she left? Have we fought before? How often? Did I have life insurance on her? Had I ever been violent? They told me I was the last person to see Olivia alive, and the husband's always the prime suspect in these cases. They searched my house top to bottom, took my clothes for testing, and swabbed my hands for gunpowder residue, even though no gun was involved. I hired a lawyer who told me not to say anything without him present. Then, the lab results came back, and the detective showed up at my door. The, body parts don't belong to your wife. What? DNA doesn't match Olivia's. They belong to a woman named Ellie Hoffman, who went missing 3 weeks ago during a solo hiking trip near El Dorado Canyon. I couldn't process it. I don't understand. Someone's been sending you pieces of Ellie Hoffman's body, made to look like your wife's. Nausea hit me. I couldn't even take her name. The detective nodded anyway. We think your wife is still alive, Mr. William, and we believe she murdered Ellie Hoffman. They found Ellie's body 2 days later in a shallow grave in the mountains. She'd been mutilated and was missing the parts that had been mailed to me. Cause of death was blunt force trauma to the head. Olivia's car was found abandoned at a trailhead near where Ellie went missing. Security footage from a gas station showed Olivia buying a shovel and trash bags the day before Ellie disappeared, but Olivia herself vanished completely. The police think she planned it all. She staged her own disappearance and killed Ellie to send me body parts, maybe to frame me for murder or drive me insane, or both. But the question nobody could answer was why? Why would she kill an innocent woman and send me the pieces? What did she want? I think about our last fight and the things I said. See if I care. Maybe she wanted to make me care and suffer. Maybe she wanted to punish me for not loving her anymore. I left Boulder and settled in Denver, near my family. The case is still open, and Olivia's on the FBI most wanted list. They think she fled to somewhere overseas, but I don't think she left. I think she's still watching me and waiting. I don't shop online, because every time a package shows up at my door, it makes my heart stop. Because Olivia's still out there, and Ellie Hoffman's murder proves she's capable of anything. Sometimes I wonder if more women looked like Olivia, if she is collecting more victims and their pieces. Maybe she's saving them for when she decides to contact me again. And sometimes, late at night, I hear a noise outside and think maybe she's finally come to finish what she started. After 7 years of marriage, I knew my wife Olivia was a total jumpy mess. So an April Fool's prank was definitely in order. I figured I'd tell her I was working late, then sneak home early, hide out, and totally jump scare her when she wasn't ready. I'd pulled stuff like this on her before, and each time, her face was hilarious. Around 6 p.m., I shot her a text to let her know my boss needed me to stick around at work until midnight, so she shouldn't wait up and just go ahead and grab some food. She hit me back with a sad face emoji, saying she'd miss me. I felt a little guilty, but my brain was already busy figuring out where I was going to hide once I got home. Maybe the shower curtain or the bedroom closet. I left work at 9:30 and drove home grinning like an idiot. I parked down the street so she wouldn't hear my car, then walked up to the house, trying not to laugh. It was just past 10 when I unlocked the front door. Inside, the living room was dark. I figured she'd gone to bed early and started heading up the stairs, but stopped dead in my tracks when I heard this soft little laugh that sounded like Olivia's coming from the bedroom, followed by deep masculine murmurs. I strained my ears and listened again. It wasn't a mistake. My heart started hammering in my chest. I crept up even quieter. The bedroom door was slightly open, with only a tiny bit of light spilling out, and as I got closer, I could clearly see a man's toes tangled with Olivia's painted ones. My throat closed up as I pushed the door open. Inside, Olivia was in our bed with a guy I'd never seen before, with sheets tangled around them. They both jumped out of the bed the moment they saw me.
Mark.
Olivia stammered. "What the fuck?" My voice came out strangled. The guy scrambled out of bed and started grabbing his clothes. Olivia was trying to cover herself with a sheet, saying my name over and over.
Mark, please let me explain.
"I'm done. We're done. Get the fuck out of my house." I pulled out my phone. "I'm calling my lawyer and your mom and everyone we know. They're all gonna know your true face. I won't spare either of you." Olivia's face went from panic to pale. She looked at the guy who looked back at her. In seconds, he was across the room, seizing my wrist. He twisted my arm behind my back, and my phone dropped, clattering onto the floor. "What are you doing? Let go of me!" I tried to pull away, but he was way stronger. Olivia hurriedly grabbed my phone and hurled it against the wall.
We can't let him tell anyone, Spencer. Do you understand?
The way she talked, plus the look on her face, immediately made me get what was going on, and my heart just totally stopped. "Olivia, what the fuck are you talking about?" I was yanking against the guy's grip. He tightened his hold, and pain shot up my arm.
I'm sorry, Mark. I'm so sorry.
But she didn't look sorry. She looked scared and desperate. The guy shoved me forward. I hit the dresser so hard, white spots danced in my vision. Before I could turn around, his hands were on my throat. I couldn't breathe. I clawed at his fingers, but they were locked. My vision started going dark around the edges. I threw my weight sideways. We crashed into the nightstand. The lamp fell and shattered. His grip loosened for a second, and I sucked in air and screamed. "Help! Somebody help me!" He grabbed me again and slammed me against the wall. My head cracked against the drywall, and everything went white.
Shut him up!
Olivia was yelling, panicking. I kept screaming as loud as I could. "Help! They're trying to kill me! Someone call 911!" His hands were back on my throat, squeezing harder. I was hitting him, but he wouldn't let go. My lungs were burning, and my eyes started closing. Right then, someone pounded on the front door. "Police! Open the door!" His hands released. I collapsed, gasping and coughing. "Come on, we have to go! Now!" He grabbed Olivia's arm, and they bolted out the back door. I could hear their footsteps fading out in the yard. The banging on the front door got louder. I crawled into the hallway and yelled that I was opening it before I finally got the door unlocked. It wasn't the cops. It was my neighbor Jerry and his wife Linda, plus Mr. Patterson from right next door. They all looked totally freaked out. "We heard screaming," Jerry said. "Are you okay? Where's Olivia?" I pointed at the back door. Jerry bolted over to check it out, while Linda called 911, and Mr. Patterson helped me sit down. The real police showed up 10 minutes later. They checked out the house, the yard, and the whole neighborhood. Olivia and the guy were long gone. I told them everything. I did my best to describe the guy. They put out an alert for Olivia, checked her phone and bank records. She pulled out $5,000 that afternoon. Her car turned up 3 days later at a bus station 2 states away. She's been gone for 8 months. The police think that she and the guy had been planning to run for a while, and my showing up early ruined it. Or maybe they would have waited until I came home at midnight like I said I would, dealt with me and made it look like something else. I'm 32 now and relocated to a different state. The cops say Olivia's still out there and they're still looking, but the detective who calls me every few months sounds less sure each time. Sometimes I wonder if she thinks about that night, whether she regrets it or whether she's just glad I survived so she's not wanted for murder. I still don't know which one I'm hoping for. When I left foster care and managed to enroll at the College of Charleston, I had no idea I'd meet someone like Ryan. He was charming, successful, and always knew the right thing to say at the right times. We dated for a year before deciding to tie the knot and move out to Ryan's hometown in Arizona. At first, married life was totally chill. Ryan made a great first impression. His coworkers thought he was super smart, and our neighbors saw us as the perfect couple. But about 6 months in, his whole attitude changed. He started dictating everything from what I wore to who I could hang out with and where I went. He tracked my phone, checked my emails, and demanded I call him every single hour when I wasn't home. "It's because I love you and want to keep you safe," he'd say, pressing my hand too hard sometimes. So when he slapped me for the first time, I definitely didn't see it coming. As I sat down crying on the floor, tasting blood in my mouth, Ryan continued explaining how much he loves me. He brought me flowers and said it would never happen again. But it did. He was always super careful, though, making sure he never left any bruises in visible places. I knew divorce wasn't going to be my way out. Ryan would drag the whole thing out, making my life hell, or maybe even off me before he'd let me walk away. So I decided to just disappear instead. It took 3 months of planning. I saved cash from grocery money Ryan never checked, created a fake ID through a friend from foster care, and found a place to go where he'd never look. One night, when he was asleep, I threw my scarf at the local river and ran away, staging that I'd drowned intentionally. My bag with clothes and cash was already hidden in bushes on the beach where I'd planted it days before. After a 2-day search came up empty, the Coast Guard declared me missing and, eventually, dead. My husband, Ryan, totally nailed the role of the heartbroken widower at my memorial. I watched the news coverage from a motel room, already a few states away. I settled down in Asheville, got a gig at a coffee shop, and rented this tiny 1-bedroom apartment right above a used bookstore. 4 months zipped by, and I started feeling pretty safe. I was making friends, laughing again, and actually daring to think I'd truly pulled it off. But the feeling of safety got completely wrecked one evening when I got home from work. The second I unlocked my apartment door, I knew something was super wrong. The kitchen chairs were pushed in and perfectly aligned with the table. Every single chair was exactly the same distance from the edge. That was one of Ryan's habits that he'd do every night before bed. My stomach dropped, and my heart started pounding. I turned to run, but he was already blocking the door. Funny how, after all these months, you can still tell it's me. I knew we were soulmates. Ryan chuckled, stepping closer. He was wearing a suit and tie, as if he'd just come from work.
How did you...
What, you think I wouldn't? You're my wife. He smiled, stepping closer.
I'm not your wife. Your wife is dead.
You faked your death. He snapped. You betrayed me and humiliated me and made me grieve. He kept walking toward me, and I backed toward the wall. "We're going home, Emma. You've had your little tantrum, and now it's time to come back."
I'm not going anywhere with you.
His face changed, and the smile disappeared. "Yes, you are." He grabbed my arm and slapped me twice. I screamed and yanked away. He grabbed me so hard his fingers dug into my flesh, and blood oozed out. I swung my purse at his face and hit him hard enough to make him let go. I ran for the door, but he caught me and threw me against the wall. My head cracked against the drywall, and it started bleeding. He yelled, repeatedly smacking my face and dragging me. I fought back and kicked and scratched his face until I drew blood. We crashed into my coffee table, and it flipped over and shattered. I grabbed a piece of broken wood and swung it at him, but missed.
Help! Someone help me!
I screamed as loud as I could. Ryan's hand went around my throat and started squeezing. I couldn't breathe, and everything was going dark. Right then, someone started pounding on my door. "Open up!" Ryan froze, and his grip loosened. I sucked in air, and the pounding got even louder. "This is the police! Open the door now!" The door burst open. My landlord, Mr. Patterson, heard the screaming and called 911. 2 cops rushed in and pulled Ryan off me. He was screaming that I was his wife, and that I'd faked my death, and that he had rights. They slammed him against the wall and cuffed him. I sat on the floor, trying to breathe with blood on my face and bruises already forming on my neck. Ryan was charged with breaking and entering, assault, and attempted kidnapping. The Charleston police added charges for filing a false missing persons report when they found out I'd faked my death. In the end, Ryan got 5 years. I'm 30 now and still living in Asheville. I have a different apartment, a new job, and a restraining order that'll last until Ryan's in his 50s. I know it all sounds like a movie, but it was 10 times more horrific than a movie. Remember the movie of Julia Roberts, Sleeping with the Enemy? Well, I have first-hand experience in that. I'm a guy who lives in Bakersfield, California, and sells insurance for a living. I have to travel all the time for work, and that night wasn't supposed to be any different. I was heading back home from a client meeting up in Fresno and got onto Highway 99 South. If you've never been, Highway 99 is seriously isolated, with only flat farmland on both sides and total darkness for miles. But I'd made plenty of trips through the route to feel comfortable. Around 10 at night, both my front tires blew out. The car swerved and I had to fight the steering wheel to pull over. When I finally got out to look, it was bad. Both tires were totally shredded. There was green glass everywhere on the road from a busted bottle. Some drunk dude probably tossed it out their window and it smashed right in my lane. I, of course, had only one spare, so I called 911. They patched me through to a tow company and the guys said it'd be at least 45 minutes. So I had no other option but to wait. Leaning against my car, I lit up a smoke and stared at the natural moonlight dancing on the swaying fields and trees. Suddenly, I got the creeps, like someone was checking me out. Thinking maybe it was the ambiance, I got in the car and started scrolling on my phone. After about 15 minutes, all that soda and caffeine needed to come out. I headed for the nearest tree and started going. All of a sudden, I heard rustling behind a bush, maybe 20 feet away. I stopped midstream and turned around. I felt as if a shadow had ducked under. My mouth dried up. "Hello?" I called out. The rustling stopped, but that creepy feeling of being watched didn't go away. I quickly zipped up and started hurrying back to my car. Right on cue, I heard footsteps echoing behind me, matching my pace exactly. I stopped and turned around. The road was empty in either direction. As I sped up, the footsteps quickened too. I sprinted to my car, yanked the door open, jumped in, and locked all the doors. I sat there, breathing hard with my heart pounding in my chest. I scanned the dark surroundings through the window, but everything seemed normal. I waited with my heart in my mouth for someone to jump on my car, smash the window, and attack me. After 10 minutes, nothing happened. I began to relax, laughing at my own foolishness. It was probably just an animal, maybe a coyote. I realized I still had to pee. I hadn't finished, and the fear had only made it worse. I looked around one more time before I opened the door. This time, I stayed close to the car, walking to a different tree right next to the road where I could see everything. I stood under the tree and one last time took a good look at my surroundings. The road was completely empty. No cars, no sign of the creepy guy. I sighed in relief and unzipped my jeans to empty my bladder. I had just begun to pee when I felt a cold shiver at the back of my neck like something bad was about to happen. Suddenly, a chuckle echoed from somewhere above. I froze and slowly looked up. A man was crouched on a thick branch directly above me, maybe 8 feet up. He looked insane, with buzz-cut hair, bulging out eyes, and strands of wires hanging straight from his skull. It was horrifying, because once I noticed closely, I realized the wires were sewn inside his head intentionally. His hands were scarred too. He was grinning like a clown, as if all of this weirdness was funny to him. As we locked eyes, his smile widened. He opened his mouth and let out an ear-splitting, inhuman scream. I stumbled backward and hit the pavement hard. My knees scraped, and my forehead cracked against the concrete with blood running into my eyes. But adrenaline kicked in. I hurriedly scrambled up and limped back to the car. By the time I got in, the blood had soaked through my shirt. I didn't care. I slammed the door, locked it, and fumbled for something to wipe the blood. I found a napkin and pressed it on my head. Outside, he was crawling down from the tree like a spider, chuckling. When he reached the ground, he stood still as a statue without blinking. My fingers curled around my phone. I had to dial 911, but I was so shaken I couldn't punch the keys or look away. My heart was hammering in my chest as I waited for him to come get me, but he didn't move an inch. I don't know how much time had passed before headlights flooded down the highway and a tow truck honked, making me jump out of my skin. The truck pulled up behind my car, and the driver got out. He was a big guy in overalls who looked normal and safe.
You the guy with the blown tires?
He called out. I nodded, still trembling, and pointed a shaky, bloodied finger where the man had stood.
What?
The tow guy grumbled. When I looked at where the man had been standing, the space was empty. He... I sobbed, shaking my head.
You okay? You're bleeding.
I nodded again, unable to form words. He helped me with the first aid, hurriedly hooked up my car and loaded it on the flatbed. I rode in the truck with him and kept looking out the window for that man, those wires, and that face. I never saw him and never told the driver what happened. He wouldn't have believed me anyway. It has been a few months and I have avoided driving alone at night, especially on empty highways, because I know he's still out there with the wires hiding in trees and waiting for the next stranded driver who is stupid enough to get out of their car. I'm from Tacoma, and I've lived in the same neighborhood long enough that walking home alone at 11 at night wasn't something I even thought twice about. The night it happened, I was at my friend Jenna's house. We were studying for the next day's history test and lost track of time. My parents knew where I was, so I wasn't worried. Besides, I'd probably done those 8 blocks 100 times. The first few blocks were fine. I was mostly alone on the road with a couple of strays, but everything felt as it should be until I turned into Spruce Street and spotted this old man. He was standing under a flickering streetlight, hunched over in a dirty jacket with stains all down the front, and he was coughing so hard his whole body was shaking with the impact. Figuring he could be a sick hobo, I kept walking. I was only some feet away from him when he bent over and spat on the sidewalk. Even from 20 feet away, I could see it was dark and thick against the concrete and smell the awful copper. I put my head down and walked faster. I wasn't going to look at him. I was just going to get past him and keep going. But I did look. I don't know why, and when I glanced up, he was already staring right at me with this huge, shady smile that shook me to the bone. I could see blood on his teeth that was dripping off his chin, and his tongue was the color of grass. I got past him as casually as I could manage and turned onto Oak Street. I kept walking. I told myself he was just some sick homeless guy and it was fine. Suddenly, I heard footsteps behind me, as if someone was dragging themselves. I looked back, and it was him. My breathing picked up. He was still smiling and bleeding, and he was following me at this steady pace that wasn't catching up but wasn't falling back either. My heart started hammering. I turned onto Maple Street and sped up, but the footsteps stayed the same. I kept looking over my shoulder, and he kept walking closer. Now, he was maybe 15 feet behind me.
Hey, why are you following me?
I stopped and turned. My voice came out smaller than I meant it to. He stopped walking and stood there swaying a little.
I thought you were leading me.
He coughed again and laughed at the same time, making a horrible, wet, choking sound. Before I could react, he stepped closer and whispered,
Back to where you left me.
I could only think of turning and bolting the fastest I could. My backpack slammed against me, and my lungs burned, but I didn't stop. I could still hear him behind me. I'd gotten so turned around I didn't even know which direction my house was anymore. Right then, my foot caught a crack in the pavement, and I went down hard on both hands. The skin on my knee sliced up, and blood oozed out of the wound. It took me a second to catch my breath. Everything hurt, and I couldn't see straight from crying. When I got up and looked back, he was there, maybe 15 feet away. He had stopped running now, and he was walking toward me. I kept going, even though my knee was killing me. Panicked, I looked around and I realized where I was. Mrs. Whitmore's house was 2 doors down from mine. I crawled to her door and started pounding on it. Mr. Whitmore opened it, looking confused and worried.
Maya?
I
spun around and pointed at the street behind me.
There's a man following me. He's right there. He's been following me for 5 blocks and he won't stop.
When Mr. Whitmore peeked over my shoulder, the street was empty, except for the parked cars and the streetlights.
There's no one there, honey.
He was right there. He said something about me leaving him somewhere. I swear he was right behind me the whole way.
They brought me inside. Mrs. Whitmore got me some water and a Band-Aid, but I couldn't stop shaking. When my dad came to pick me up, Mr. Whitmore explained what happened. My dad figured I'd just scared myself over some homeless guy and kept saying I was safe now, that it was okay. But when we were walking back to our house, I saw the footprints on the sidewalk. They were dark and wet, leading right up to the Whitmore's porch, stopping exactly where I'd been standing when I turned around. I didn't sleep that night, kept the lights on, door locked, and every time I closed my eyes, I could see that smile. By morning, the footprints had disappeared. It had rained or something, or maybe I imagined them. I honestly don't know anymore. I'm 19 now and at college in Seattle, but I think about that old man all the time. I still remember every detail, including the words he said to me. I've turned it over 1,000 times, and it still doesn't make sense. I never left anyone anywhere. I'd never seen him before that night, but he recognized me. He looked at me like he knew exactly who I was. Sometimes I wonder if he's still out there, walking those streets in Tacoma, looking for whoever he thinks I am, still bleeding and still smiling. Some nights, I hear coughing outside my dorm window, and when I get up to look, there's nobody there, except wet footprints on the sidewalk leading right to my door. I'm Kayla from Portland, Oregon. I was 16 years old when this happened. My parents had gone out for their anniversary dinner, leaving me home alone. We live in one of those super boring suburbs where everyone is always up in everyone else's business. It's totally safe, though. Like, nothing ever happens here. Whipped up some food for myself and chilled on the couch watching Netflix. It was getting a little dull around 9:30, so I headed to my room to just mess around on my phone. About half an hour went by and I was starting to get sleepy. My eyes glanced over at my window just as the motion light in the backyard flipped on. We have this sensor light that only turns on if something moves out there. I peeked out the window just in case, but I didn't see a thing. I went back to my phone. Seconds later, the light went out again and then flickered back on. I thought that was odd. The timing felt weird. It was really slow and felt on purpose, like someone was screwing up right past where the light could hit. I got back up and checked out the window again. Everything seemed normal, except for the lights that kept going on and off without any reason. My stomach started doing flips. I went downstairs and made sure all the doors were locked. I peered out the back slider and saw a shadow move past where the light hit. Someone's out there. I texted my dad and told him about the motion light. He texted back immediately and told me not to look outside. Kayla, seriously, get away from the windows and keep it down. Don't turn on any lights downstairs. Mom and I are bailing on the restaurant right now, and we'll be home in 20 minutes, tops.
Dad, you're freaking me out.
Just relax, hon. We'll be there soon. But seriously, how was I supposed to relax when he was telling me to keep it down and not even glance outside? What did he think was lurking out there? Anyway, flicked off all the downstairs lights, like he told me, and headed back up to my room. I sat there on my bed in the dark. Outside, the motion light kept turning on and off. I tried to just tune it out by getting lost on my phone, but I couldn't stop the creeps rising up my spine when I knew there was someone out there. And even though my dad told me not to look, I was seriously dying of curiosity. I had to see what was going on. I tiptoed over to the window and hid to the side. The light was still off. I hung out for a second, waiting for it to flip on, and then I pulled the curtain back enough to get a peek at the yard. First, it was just my dark, empty yard. The grass was blowing in the wind, and so were the trees along the fence. I was about to drop the curtain when it popped back on. This time, a guy was standing there, smack right in the middle of the yard. He had to be around 7 feet tall, and he was still as a statue, staring directly at my window. I knew it was only a matter of time before he got to my window. I squeezed my eyes shut and just started praying my parents would get here before he did. I could hear footsteps coming closer, then stopping right outside my window. I slowly slid the curtain and peeked out, but no one was out there anymore. The empty yard stood alone. I was confused. Did he leave? I watched the yard almost like I was looking for him, but couldn't spot any movement. I looked up, I don't know why, and the man was hanging by the window shade like a monkey, with a grin. His eyes never blinked. For a good amount of time, he hung there without any difficulty, and then dropped down on the ground, which was probably a few inches for him. He then rested both of his palms on the glass and brought his face so close to the glass that his smushed face appeared even more disturbing. I screamed and started crawling back on the floor because my legs forgot to run. The man kept touching and rubbing the glass like it was all meant for me. Then he took out his huge tongue and kept licking the glass up and down without breaking eye contact with me. I started crying, desperately waiting for my parents to come back. But the wait was long. For the next 10 minutes, the man kept circling the house, trying every door and window he could find. One thing was for sure, he was dying to get inside the house. When he started kicking and punching the back door, I lost all hope to get out of the situation without getting hurt. But suddenly, the cop car's sirens echoed. The man didn't wait a second. He vanished into the darkness, just like he came. My dad filed a report. The cops found footprints all around the house, but the man was never caught, and he never came back. As a woman, I now know what his gestures or behavior meant, but even back then, as a young teenager, I knew he wanted something from me, something that wouldn't be consensual, from my side at least. I grew up in West Palm Beach, Florida, so naturally, most evenings were spent just chilling at the beach. I was 15 when this went down. My friends and I decided to hang out at Mar-a-Lago that Saturday night. The sun was still out when we met up, but the air was definitely starting to cool off. There were 6 of us, me, my buddy Jake, and 4 other kids from school, including 2 girls, Emma and Sophia, and 2 other guys. We were in the middle of a volleyball game when this weird middle-aged woman started hanging around nearby. She was maybe 40, with blonde hair, wearing super expensive clothes and sunglasses, even though the sun was setting. We ignored her, figuring she was just some tourist or whatever, until, after maybe 10 minutes, she walked over, grinning.
Hey, kids. Beautiful evening, right?
We all nodded. Nobody said much because of stranger danger and all that. The woman sat down in the sand near us and started chatting. She said her name was Patty and she lived nearby. She asked if we lived around here and where we went to school. Her questions sounded harmless, but something about her felt off, especially the way she was eyeing Emma and Sophia.
You know, I work for someone pretty important. He owns a private island just off the coast. He's having a party tonight with young people like you. Music and food. Really exclusive.
I ignored her, but Emma and Sophia perked up.
A party? Yeah. My boss loves meeting new people. Especially smart and attractive young people.
She smiled at the girls.
I could take you there. We got a boat waiting.
My stomach twisted. We can't. I have a curfew and need to be home soon. The woman's smile tightened.
It's still early. Just for an hour or two.
Nah, I really gotta go. I looked at my friends. We all do, right? Jake nodded, and the other guys agreed, but Emma and Sophia were whispering to each other and giggling. This sounds sketchy, I said to them. Going with a stranger to some island? Come on. The woman stood up.
It's not sketchy. It's an opportunity. My boss is very connected and could change your lives.
She looked at me.
You should come see something interesting before you judge.
I'm good.
Just walk with me for a second. I'll show you the boat and prove it's real.
I don't know why I went. Maybe to prove to the girls it was a scam, or maybe just curiosity. But I followed her away from the group and down the beach toward the quieter section. The moment we were out of earshot, she grabbed me. Her hand closed around my throat as she slammed me against the seawall. Concrete scraped my back, and I was struggling to breathe.
Listen to me, you little shit.
Her voice was cold and vicious.
Don't interfere with my plans again. You understand?
I tried to talk, but could only make choking sounds.
Those girls are coming with me. You're going home. And if you tell anyone, I will find you.
She let go, and I sucked in air and started to scream. She shut me up with a punch in my face. My nose exploded, with blood everywhere and pain like I'd never felt. I fell on my knees while she walked away and disappeared around the corner. Jake found me a few minutes later, bleeding and crying. He helped me up and asked what happened. I told him everything. We ran back to where the group had been, but Emma and Sophia were already gone. The other guys said they'd left with the woman and walked toward the marina, saying they'd be back in a couple of hours. Jake called the police. I was still bleeding and trying to explain when a cop showed up and took our statements and radioed for backup. They searched the marina but found neither the girls nor the woman. Emma and Sophia didn't return home that night. The police investigated, put out alerts, and checked security cameras. They found footage of the girls getting into a white boat with the woman. The boat disappeared into the Atlantic. Months passed, but there were no traces of any of them. Their folks tried everything. The community helped with missing person posters. The folks even sobbed and begged on the news, but nothing came of it. Eventually, the case went cold until 2019, when Jeffrey Epstein was arrested. The news channel showed photos of his associates who'd helped him and recruited for him. Amongst them was the woman from the beach. Her real name was Sarah Kensington, and she was one of Epstein's recruiters. She'd been bringing girls to his island for years. I called the FBI immediately and told them everything. They already knew about her and said she'd fled the country when Epstein was arrested. She was currently hiding somewhere in Europe, and Interpol was looking but hadn't found her. They confirmed Emma and Sophia were likely among his victims, who were probably taken to his island to never return. I'm a father of a girl now. Whenever I look at my little princess, that night doesn't just feel like a bad memory. It feels like a wound that won't close. The broken nose healed up years ago, didn't even leave much of a scar, but I can't shake the picture of what those girls must have gone through. I lay awake at night, shuddering at how dark this world is for women, and honestly, I'm super scared about my baby's future. The guilt is a monster in my gut. I tried to warn them, but trying wasn't enough. I should have screamed louder, fought harder, anything to physically stop them. Epstein's dead now, and that's one less monster. But Sarah Kensington is still out there, and Emma and Sophia are still missing. I go to their family vigils every year and stand way in the back. I just can't bring myself to face their parents. How do you look at them and not fall apart, knowing you were the last person who had a chance to save their daughters, and didn't? I'm from Syracuse, New York, and went to medical school at Columbia in Manhattan. I was in my 3rd year when they took us on the North Brother Island field trip as part of this program, which was aimed at training future doctors to work in remote areas and give medical aid to underserved communities. It sounded noble, but I just thought it was cool we'd get to see a forbidden island. North Brother Island sits in the East River, between the Bronx and Rikers. It's been totally abandoned since the 50s, and nobody's allowed there except for occasional research groups. The place is famous for 2 things: Mary Mallon, who was quarantined there after she lost her mind being infected with a contagious disease, and the ruins of Riverside Hospital, where similar patients were kept. We took a boat from the Bronx. There were 12 of us med students plus our guide, a guy named Mr. Henderson, who was a park ranger or something. He gave us a safety briefing on the ride over. "Stay with the group and don't touch anything." He handed out face masks and gloves and explained that the hospital had housed tuberculosis, polio, and typhoid patients. Later, it became an asylum for the mentally ill, so the place had layers of contamination. When we docked, the island looked even worse than the photos. Nature had completely taken over, with trees and thick vegetation everywhere. Rising through it all were the skeletal remains of Riverside Hospital, with red brick crumbling and windows like empty eye sockets. We walked single file through overgrown paths, while Mr. Henderson pointed out buildings. "That's the morgue. That was the tuberculosis pavilion. Over there were the nurses' quarters." Everything was rotting and falling apart. Inside the main hospital building, it was dark, and our flashlight cut through the gloom. There was peeling paint and collapsed ceilings and graffiti on the walls from people who'd snuck over before the island got locked down tight. "This section housed the most severe cases," Mr. Henderson said. "It was for patients who were too contagious or dangerous for regular wards." I lingered behind, looking at the details. The bed frames were badly rusted, broken syringes were scattered everywhere, and a wheelchair with vines growing through it occupied a corner. My classmates moved ahead, but I didn't. I waited until their voices faded down the corridor and entered through the door I had spotted. It was partially hidden behind a collapsed section of wall and looked different from the others. It had a newer lock, like someone had been using it recently. I shouldn't have gone in. I knew it was stupid, but curiosity won. The room was small and windowless. My flashlight revealed things that made my stomach turn. There were restraints bolted to the walls, old surgical instruments laid out on a metal tray, and dozens of patient files scattered across a desk. I picked up one of the records. The handwriting was shaky, detailing experimental procedures and dates reaching back to the 40s. They included records of forced lobotomies, drug trials on patients with mental illnesses, and electroshock therapy administered as a form of punishment. "Jesus," I whispered. A sickening feeling gripped me as I read the details. Suddenly, sounds of coughing and vomiting erupted from the next room. Thinking it could be one of my classmates who had fallen sick, I dragged my feet toward the noise and pushed open the connecting door. "Hello? You okay?" The room was empty, but my flashlight had caught a fresh, wet puddle on the floor. It was an almost black mixture of blood and vomit. I shone my light around and saw a small figure hunched in the corner, facing away from me. I squinted and realized it was a woman. She was wearing a dirty white hospital gown, shaking and making a nasty gurgling sound. "Ma'am? Are you—" She turned around, and words died in my throat. Her jaw was hanging open, but not like a normal mouth. It looked like it had been nearly severed from her face, dangling by threads of tissue, with blood pouring out. Her eyes were wide and staring. I screamed, stumbled backward, and hit the wall. She started moving toward me, crawling with that broken jaw swinging. I ran back through the experimental room and into the hallway, running blind. "Help! Someone help!" I found my group 3 corridors over. Mr. Henderson grabbed my shoulders. "What happened?" "There's someone in there. A woman. She's hurt. Her face." "What woman? Where?" I led them back. We found the experimental room with the files and the instruments, but the next room was empty. The floor was dry, with no puddle or blood in sight. I saw her. I swear, her jaw was..." Mr. Henderson's face was pale. "This island is completely restricted. There's no one else here." "But I saw..." "You saw nothing." His voice was firm. "Let's go. Tour's over." We walked back to the boat in silence. Nobody looked at me. I felt crazy, but I knew what I'd seen. As we pulled away from the dock, I felt eyes watching me. I looked back at the hospital and froze. She was there, standing on the roof 4 stories up in her white gown, blowing in the wind. She was watching our boat leave. I grabbed the student next to me. "Look, on the roof!" By the time she turned, the figure had disappeared. We got back to the school, and life went on, but I couldn't forget her or stop myself from looking up the hospital's history. Tucked in the dark corners of the internet, I found websites that claimed the place undertook unauthorized experiments in the 40s and 50s. Many patients died from botched procedures. Amongst them were women subjected to surgical trials without consent. One case involved a patient who'd had her jaw surgically broken as part of a failed procedure to treat mental illness. It reminded me of the face that still keeps me up at night. I don't know how much of what I've read is real, but I know for certain I'm never setting foot on that island again. I moved into Michael's apartment a month after losing my job at the warehouse. I was 21, had $800 to my name, and was completely out of options. The Craigslist listing advertised an available room with utilities included for $300 a month. It was suspiciously cheap for the area, but I wasn't in a position to be picky. Michael answered the door wearing a white t-shirt and jeans that looked like he'd been wearing them for ages. He was maybe 35 and had the kind of mid-face that could be easily forgotten. The room he showed me was just as unimpressive. It only had a mattress on the floor, a closet with a missing door, and a window facing a brick wall. But at that time, even the bare room had felt like my best option. I agreed to move in the same evening. The apartment started feeling wrong right away, though I couldn't pinpoint why. Maybe it was the excessive cleaning or the lack of furniture and personal touches in the house. The living room had a single couch, a TV, and completely bare walls. When I asked how long he'd lived there, dude said 5 years, but the place looked like he'd moved in yesterday. That first night, I woke up at around 2 a.m. to a low murmur from somewhere in the apartment. When I looked, Michael was standing in the bathroom with the light on, talking to the mirror. I couldn't hear what he was saying, but his lips were moving, and he kept nodding like the reflection was responding to him. I closed my door quietly and got back into bed. Told myself he was on the phone or maybe rehearsing for something. The next morning, by the time I woke up, Michael had already prepared coffee and offered me a cup. While I was drinking it, he grinned and said, "You should watch more quietly next time, Clay." I stared at him, stunned. I don't know what you mean. I stammered. "Last night, when you opened your door, the hinges squeak." He chuckled, taking a sip. "It's fine, though. All of them initially make the same mistakes." "All of who?" I asked, but he'd already gotten up and walked out, humming some old song. The conversation had made me uneasy. Over the next few days, I started paying more attention and noticed Michael almost always kept the door down the hallway bolted. When I asked him about it, he said it was the basement. It has some really personal stuff and is totally off limits. Please, never go down there, okay? But I'd hear him spend nights down there. I told myself it was none of my business. I was paying rent for a room, and what he did in his basement wasn't my concern. Then, one night, I woke up and heard him unlock the basement door. I lay there in the dark, listening to his footsteps descend. I tossed and turned. At the end, curiosity got the better of me, and I got up. I opened my door and snuck out. The basement door was open, and light was illuminating the staircase. I could hear Michael's soft murmurs and occasional hiccups. He was talking to someone. I crossed the hallway and started down the stairs, making sure the steps didn't creak under my weight. As I descended lower, an awful odor made my head spin. I covered my nose with my elbow and kept going. My heartbeat had picked up, and bile rose in my throat. From the bottom of the stairs, I saw that Michael was kneeling on the concrete floor with his back to me. He was sobbing, embracing a log-like thing covered with a tarp. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry, Duff. I didn't want to. You have to understand, it had to be done. He pulled back the tarp. I saw what was underneath, and my legs almost gave out. It was a decomposed body, so much so that I couldn't tell who it was. The smell hit me, and I had to cover my mouth to keep from gagging. Michael kept talking to it, running his hand over what was left of its hair. I pulled out my phone with shaking hands and started recording. Got maybe 30 seconds of footage before I backed up the stairs as quietly as I could. Somehow, I got into my room and locked the door before I called 911. My heart was hammering so hard I could barely speak. The police arrived within 15 minutes. I met them outside and showed them the video. They went in with their guns drawn. I waited on the sidewalk, expecting to hear shouting or a struggle, but when they brought Michael out 5 minutes later in handcuffs, he wasn't fighting. He was smiling, as if he was relieved. As they walked him past me, he looked right at me and said, "Thank you. I've been needing someone to see." The officers took him to their car. One of them stayed behind to talk to me. They'd found the body was of a man named David, who had been Michael's roommate for a long time. The officer explained that Michael had lost control during a heated argument one night and killed David in a fit. He was dead for months. Michael had kept him in the basement all that time. When they searched the apartment, they found journals filled with pages about his guilt. Michael wanted to turn himself in, but couldn't make himself do it. I desperately wanted someone to find out and force his hand. I just happened to be that someone. It has been a year, and I'm still messed up. I'm crashing back at my parents' place, got a new gig, and I'm talking to a therapist who knows all about this trauma. But I can't shake it. I'm still the kid who went down those stairs. My parents are insisting I get out and live my life, that someday I gotta move on, because they ain't gonna be there for me forever. I tell them that just thinking about getting a new roommate gives me serious anxiety. Selena and I broke up 4 months before April Fool's. She took it badly and kept showing up outside my building. When she couldn't get in, she started leaving voicemails at 2 in the morning, crying into the phone. When her antics didn't work, she started tagging me in old photos with captions like, "Miss this." My friends told me to block her. Selena had always been obsessive during our relationship. In fact, it was the same toxicity that had drifted us apart. But it was April 1st. I was drunk and thought it'd be hilarious to mess with her a little. So I texted her. "Hi, Selena. I've been thinking about us. I was wrong. Can we talk? I miss you." She responded in seconds.
Oh my god! Yes! Yes, yes! When and where? I can come right now!
I should have stopped right there, told her it was April Fool's and blocked her number. Instead, I told her to meet me at Riverside Park at midnight, the one near her apartment, and said we could talk things through.
I'll be there! I knew you'd come back to me.
She replied. I showed the whole thread to my roommate, Tyler, and we both lost it at the thought of Selena making a fool of herself, sitting in a dark park at midnight, while I was on the couch in my sweatpants. Was it mean? Yeah. But I was 23 and she'd been making my life hell for months, and I wasn't thinking past the punchline. Midnight came and went. I was 3 beers in and halfway through a Call of Duty match. I had literally forgotten about the whole thing until my phone buzzed around 1 a.m.
I'm so happy we're back together. Thanks for coming to see me.
My heart stopped beating. I hadn't left my apartment and hadn't even changed out of my sweatpants. Tyler was right next to me on the couch. There was no way Selena thought she'd seen me at the park because I wasn't there. I called her immediately. It rang through to voicemail. I called again and again. Tyler asked what was going on. When I showed him the text, he went pale as a ghost. Dude, who the hell is with her? I tried 5 more times, but she didn't pick up. My hands were shaking bad enough that I kept mistyping, but I got the message out. Selena, I'm not at the park. That's not me. This was a really stupid prank. I'm sorry. Please answer your phone. The 3 dots appeared in seconds.
It's too late.
She replied before the chat went dead. I called her roommate Jessica. She picked up on the 4th ring, half asleep and irritated.
What?
Is Selena there?
No, she left like 2 hours ago. Said she was meeting you. Why?
My throat closed.
No, Jason. What's going on?
I told her everything, and we concluded that whoever sent me that last message had been at the park with Selena and was using her phone. Jessica started screaming and said she was calling the police before she hung up. I sat staring at the screen. Tyler was pacing, saying we should drive to the park, but I couldn't get off the couch. 2 officers showed up at my door at around 2:30. They asked me about my relationship with Selena and why I'd told her to meet me at midnight if I never planned to go. I walked them through the prank and watched their faces go flat. So, you lured your ex-girlfriend to an empty park in the middle of the night as a joke? I didn't think she'd actually... I'm sorry. She's safe, right? You found her? They searched the park and found her car in the lot with doors unlocked. The keys were still in the ignition. Her purse was on the front seat, but her phone was missing. Under one of the oak trees near the walking path, they found her left heel lying in the dirt with blood smeared on the strap. Selena never came home that night. The police kept me at the station for hours. They wanted my whereabouts between 11 and 2. Fortunately, Tyler backed up my story, and the building security footage confirmed I never left. They had to let me go, but I could see what they thought. They searched for weeks, but couldn't even trace a single lead. The section of the park where they found the shoe had no cameras. Selena just vanished. When they pulled her phone records, the text to me came from her number, but by the time they tried to ping the location, the phone was already off. It was probably destroyed. For months to come, I couldn't stop sobbing, thinking about everything. Who was waiting at that park? Someone who knew she'd be there because I'd told her to come. Someone who'd been watching her, maybe. And I handed them the whole setup without knowing it. I'm 24 now. I keep trying Selena's number, hoping one day she'd answer and I could tell her how sorry I was. Jessica doesn't answer my calls. Selena's family told me not to contact them. Tyler moved out 3 months after it happened, said he couldn't be around me. I don't sleep. Each night, I keep going over the same thing. Did she figure out it wasn't me when she got there? Did she try to run? Or did whoever took her keep up the act long enough that she didn't realize until it was already done? The case is still open, technically, but the detective told me last year they've run out of leads. Her file is in a box somewhere, collecting dust. People ask if I think she's still alive. I don't know. I don't let myself answer that. I live in Phoenix, Arizona. It is the hottest city in America, where even nighttime feels like an oven. It was late September when I stopped at the McDonald's on Indian School Road around 1:30 a.m. I just wanted a quick snack before heading home. The drive-through line was empty. As I pulled up to the speaker, a girl's voice came through. She sounded young. She was probably in her early 20s.
Welcome to McDonald's, what can I get you?
Yeah, can I get a quarter-pounder meal and...
Oh my god, is that you?
She cut me off excitedly. What?
Pull up to the window.
I drove forward, confused. When I got to the window, she was leaning out. She was a very pretty Hispanic girl. She flashed me a big, friendly smile, as if we were long-lost friends. But I'd never seen her before in my life.
Hi! Oh my god, I can't believe it's really you!
I'm sorry, but do I know you? I tried to be polite.
You're so funny!
She laughed, like I had cracked the funniest joke on the planet.
You look even better in person.
My stomach twisted. This felt wrong. I'm average, balding, and I drive a 15-year-old Camry. Girls don't randomly hit on guys like me. Look, I just want my food,
You should totally give me your number.
she said while twirling her hair.
Or like, maybe I could come home with you tonight?
I stared at her. What?
Just for a bit. Please?
Her voice sounded desperate.
I get off in like 10 minutes. You could wait and then we could...
No, I don't even know you. I was getting uncomfortable. Can I just get my order? The change was immediate. Her smile vanished, her eyes widened, and she started to speak. That's when a loud banging noise erupted from inside, sounding like a heavy object slamming against a wall. The girl's face instantly drained of color.
Call 911.
She whispered. What?
Please call...
A guy wearing a black ski mask emerged from behind the counter. He seized her hair and forcefully pulled her head back. She let out an ear-piercing scream. Shut the fuck up! He slammed her face into the counter, and the impact sent blood spattering onto the window separating us. I was paralyzed, unable to move or think. A second masked figure appeared. This one was wielding a long, serrated knife and shouting at the woman. Where's the safe? Where's the fucking money? She was now crying.
I don't know the combination, I'm just...
The first guy hit her across the face again. She fell out of view. Shaking, I fumbled for my phone, dropping and then snatching it up. I locked my doors and immediately called 911. Through the window, the guy with the knife looked up and saw me. He started moving toward the window. I slammed the car into reverse. The tires screeched as I grabbed the phone from my lap and backed away.
911, what's your emergency?
I told the operator everything that was happening. She told me to stay put in my car and not try to be a hero. Through the drive-through window, I could still see them. The girl was on the ground. They were kicking her over and over, but she wasn't screaming anymore. I watched the guy with the knife bend down. I couldn't see what he was doing. A minute later, he stood up with a butcher's knife in his hands. It had an intestine dangling off it. His hands were dripping blood. He looked at his partner, and they both ran toward the back. The cops pulled in maybe 30 seconds later. Officers jumped out with guns drawn. I got out of my car with my hands up and told them what happened. They went inside and came out 2 minutes later. One cop was on his radio, calling for paramedics. Another was running toward the back parking lot. The robbers had run out the back door, and the girl was dead. When the ambulance showed up, they brought her out on a stretcher with a sheet covered that had turned crimson. I heard one of the paramedics say something about multiple stab wounds. I had to give a statement and describe what I saw. A detective asked if I got a plate number on their car. I told them that I didn't even see a car. The girl's name was Maria Santos. She was 22 years old and was working night shift to pay for community college. The guys who killed her were caught a week later. They tried to rob a gas station 2 towns over. Police matched their DNA to the ones found at the McDonald's. I testified at their trial and had to watch security footage and see Maria's face when that guy grabbed her. The jury convicted both of them. I'm 26 now. It's almost been a year. I still think about Maria every day, about how she was trying to get me to take her with me and save her, but I misunderstood it as a flirting attempt. My therapist says I couldn't have known, and I did the right thing by calling 911. She says it was natural, that I prioritized saving my own life before hers. It doesn't help with the nightmares or the deep guilt I feel every time I pass a McDonald's. I attended college in Eugene, Oregon. It's a small campus nestled between mountains and forests, and is sort of famous for its late-night parties. I was getting back from one of them when I found myself stumbling down Willamette Street at 2 a.m., slightly tipsy and craving McD's fries like I wouldn't make it to tomorrow. Luckily, I found the bright yellow McDonald's sign glowing down the block and headed toward it, doing that drunk walk where you think you're going straight, but you're actually zigzagging. When I got there, the parking lot was completely dead, but all the lights were on inside, and I could see the counter and the menu boards, but couldn't spot anyone at the registers. The door was locked, so I banged as loud as I could. "Hey, y'all open?" I yelled, but no one answered. I kept banging. I pressed my face against the glass and saw movement in the back. "I can see you! Can I get some fries?" I hollered. A tall person came up to the front. When they stepped into the light, I could see the red and yellow striped shirt, big red wig, and white face paint. They were dressed as Ronald McDonald, but it had gone bad. The makeup was all smeared, running down their face, and the wig was crooked, sitting too far back. The worst part was the painted smile, which stretched out super wide across their whole face, looking totally creepy. Hey man?" I tried to sound normal. "You guys still serving? I just want some fries or..." The sentence died in my throat as he tilted his head like a dog hearing a weird noise. His smile got freaking huge. He blinked, then bolted right at me. Startled, I tripped backward. "What the fuck?" He smacked into the glass door that rattled in response. His hands, clad in white gloves with those weird red and yellow stripes, were flat against it, and he was cracking up with this really high-pitched laugh that sounded weird for a guy. I was running my ass off, my drunk legs pumping. I almost ate shit on the curb, but caught myself. I heard the door rattle behind me. When I looked over, he was trying to get out. My eyes landed on the door to this park right across the street. It was dark as hell. I bolted toward it anyway, thinking I could hide there. I made it to a bench and collapsed behind it. My heart was going a mile a minute. I tried to stay as quiet as I could, but everything was seriously spinning. I listened carefully. There were footsteps on the sidewalk getting closer, and the guy was still freakily giggling. I held my breath as the footsteps got louder. Suddenly, he stopped right on the other side of the bench, and an eerie calm settled over. All I could hear was my heart trying to punch its way out of my chest. Eventually, the footsteps started up again. This time, they were fading out. I waited for 2 minutes before I stood up to peek. The street was totally empty. I let out a breath I didn't know I was holding. I turned slightly, and something dropped from the tree above. I jumped and screamed at the top of my lungs. It was the guy. He was right in front of me, with that fucking smile, 2 inches from my face. As I turned to run, I tripped over my own feet and hit the pavement hard. My hands, knees, and face scraped concrete. Everything hurt. The world spun, my stomach lurched, and I threw up all over myself. I was on my hands and knees, puking, when I felt him standing over me. I could see those big red shoes in my peripheral vision. He started laughing, like this was the funniest thing he'd ever seen. I was still on the ground, covered in my own vomit, and frantically scrambling backward to escape, while he just stood there, laughing. He then stopped and went quiet, staring at me for a long time. He turned around and walked back toward the McDonald's, whistling as if nothing had happened. I sat there in my own puke for probably 10 minutes. I was too scared to move and too drunk to think straight. Eventually, I got up and walked home. I took the longest way possible to avoid that McDonald's. Jake found me passed out in the shower at 4 a.m., still wearing my clothes. He thought I'd just gotten too drunk. I didn't tell him what happened. I returned the following day, completely sober and in broad daylight. The McDonald's appeared entirely normal, with customers eating and children in the play place. I approached the manager and asked if anyone had been dressed as Ronald McDonald the previous night. He looked at me like I was crazy. "We don't do that anymore. Ronald's been retired for years." "But I saw..." "You probably saw someone messing around. We do get weirdos sometimes." He went back to work. My online search of local crime reports revealed nothing regarding an individual in a clown costume or any suspicious activity. It has been weeks. I am still in Eugene and go to that campus every day, but I don't walk home drunk anymore. In fact, I avoid McDonald's at all costs, because even a single glimpse of those golden arches make me shiver. My roommates think I had a bad trip, that I hallucinated the whole thing. Maybe they're right. Maybe it was just the booze. But I still remember those big red shoes standing over me while I puked. Still hear that laugh and see that smile stretched way too wide. And I know it was real. We lived in Portland, Oregon, in one of those old craftsman houses near Hawthorne. My wife Rosie fell in love with it the second she saw it 7 years ago. She said it was perfect for starting our life together. I was also happy to call it home. The next 2 years were heaven, but around the third year, things started to turn south. We were arguing over dumb stuff, like me leaving dishes in the sink or her spending too much money. Before long, the fights got so bad we'd yell until we were hoarse. Often, she'd throw things. I'd punch holes in the wall. Our neighbors filed complaints twice. The cops even showed up once. By year 5, I knew it was over. We were miserable, but Rosie refused to admit it. She kept saying we just needed therapy, or another vacation, and maybe a baby. I didn't want a baby with someone I couldn't stand being in the same room with. The night I first mentioned the word was in February. We had this huge fight after she'd gone through my phone while I was sleeping and found texts with my coworker Rachel about a work project. It was innocent stuff, but Rosie was convinced I was cheating.
You're sleeping with her! I know you are!
Rosie's voice cracked. Her hands balled into fists at her sides. "I'm not!" I shot back, slamming my phone on the table. "Jesus, Rosie! We were talking about the Henderson account, nothing else!" Her eyes narrowed while she accused me of lying. "That's it. I want a divorce." The room went dead silent. For an entire minute, Rosie stared at me like I'd grown a second head. I watched her face go from angry to blank, as if I had slapped her.
I'll fix it.
She looked up at me with a grin.
I'll fix everything, Kyle. You'll see.
Her grin made my skin crawl, but I was too worn out to argue. I slept in the guest room that night. The next morning, I woke up to Rosie making pancakes with chocolate chips. She was humming a song about eternal love, wearing that yellow dress I used to like.
Morning, baby. I made your favorite breakfast.
She giggled, kissing my cheek. "Rosie, we need to talk about..."
Shh. Just eat. We're going to be okay. I promise.
Over the next few weeks, my wife was like a different person. Every morning, I'd wake up to breakfast and kisses. She'd leave these little notes in my lunch, reminding me how much she loved me and how I was her everything. She was sweet and devoted and putting in so much effort. I was convinced we really could figure this out, until shit got really weird. It was a Monday morning, and I was mid-call with my coworker about an important project when my phone blew up and wouldn't turn on. I thought it was a glitch and got a replacement, but that one died too within a week. Afterwards, I started paying more attention to the little things and realized the door locks looked different too. I tried my key one night to confirm, and it wouldn't work. When I asked Rosie about it, she just said she'd upgraded them. I found cameras installed everywhere in the house as well. "You got cameras?" She defended herself, saying it was for extra security. I decided to leave for good that night. I threw some stuff in a bag and waited till Rosie was totally out, before sneaking downstairs and making a break for the car. When I got in, I kept trying the ignition, but the damn thing wouldn't turn over. I got down from the car and opened the hood, only to find that the battery was gone.
Looking for this?
I jumped and turned around. Rosie was right there on the porch, holding my car battery in one hand and the big kitchen knife in the other. Rosie?
After everything I've done, after I've fixed things between us, you still want to leave me?
She moved closer, crying and smiling at the same time. I tried my best to reason with her that it'll be better to live alone peacefully than live like animals under the same roof. Rosie was still walking towards me, holding the knife, while I backed up towards the house.
Love requires sacrifices, Kyle. I read that in a book about saving marriages.
Stay back!
If you can't love me willingly...
She stopped a few feet away, the knife glinting in the nearby streetlight.
And I'll make sure you never leave.
Rosie let out an ear-piercing scream and charged at me. I booked it back toward the house, got chased down the hall, and barely made it into the guest room in time to lock the door before she could reach me. I ended up locking myself in the guest room and calling 911 on the landline as she repeatedly stabbed the wooden door, yelling at me that we would never be over. Her rage continued until I heard cop car sirens outside. When the cops got in, they found Rosie in the kitchen, just chilling and making tea. A knife was on the counter, and my car battery was on the table. She totally downplayed what happened, telling the officers I was overreacting and that we just had a little argument. But the door was enough proof. She was arrested immediately, slapped with a restraining order, and taken for a psychiatric evaluation. It helped me get a quick divorce. It has nearly been a year. I left Oregon for good and stay in Seattle now. It was difficult to start over, but I'm picking up pieces. I don't date anymore. My marriage has left me with deep trust issues. Every time a woman smiles at me, I think of Rosie standing in that driveway with tears on her face and a knife in her hand. I often get nightmares of finding my psycho ex-wife leaning on my face with a creepy grin, standing right next to my bed. I even thought about visiting her at the mental institution, but then again, I fear giving out about my current whereabouts. It's better to bury the past. Freshman year was my first time living away from home, and I was supposed to be stepping into the best years of my life. But honestly, I was way more stressed about having to share space with a total stranger. All that anxiety kind of melted the second Rhea showed up on move-in day. She was quiet, studious, and almost ridiculously polite. She helped me unpack without even being asked, and even offered to take the bed by the window, even though it got direct sunlight. We got to talking about our majors, where we're from, and clicked, like we were on track to be accidental dorm besties. By the end of the first week, Rhea had started leaving little handwritten reminders on our shared desk that made me feel weirdly taken care of. But some moments threw me off. I noticed it for the first time when she was on the phone with her parents. She'd been talking in her usual soft dialect before. Suddenly, her voice caught a sharp and husky undertone, as if someone had flipped a switch. When she hung up, I asked if she cloned voices like that often. She looked at me like I had grown two heads and said she knew nothing about it. One night, I woke up at 2:13 a.m. to low whispers from her side of the room. I lay there in the dark and listened as Rhea argued with someone. Her voice shifted between soft and sharp, as if two people were having a conversation. I looked over, and she was alone in her bed, facing the wall. I squinted, but couldn't see a phone or anyone else there. The next morning, I brought it up. Rhea just stared at me, like I'd started speaking another language. She said she didn't remember and had slept straight through the night. She looked genuinely confused, so I dropped it. A couple of days later, the sticky notes started appearing in different handwriting and with different expressions. Instead of reminders, they read things like,
Stop watching her. She's not your friend.
I found one taped to my laptop and another inside my textbook. I asked Rhea if she'd seen anyone come into our room. She insisted she was clueless. The day after that, I'd put my jacket on my desk chair and found it hanging in my closet. My shoes would migrate from the door to under my bed. They were small things that anyone would easily dismiss as their own forgetfulness. Except, I knew I wasn't forgetting. One afternoon, I came back from class, and Rhea was in the shower. I was looking for my charger and opened her closet by mistake. Taped to the inside of the door was a photo of me, maybe taken from Instagram, and underneath, scribbled in that same messy handwriting, was...
She knows.
I stood there staring, trying to make sense of what I was seeing. The shower turned off. I closed the closet door and sat at my desk with my heart pounding. When Rhea came out, I asked her directly if she'd put the photo there. She looked at me like I was crazy, said she'd never been on my Instagram. I should have moved out then, but I was 18 and didn't want to cause problems, and part of me still believed there was a reasonable explanation. That night, a storm rolled in and knocked the power out. The whole floor went dark. I was in bed, scrolling on my phone, when I heard footsteps circling my bed. I kept my breathing steady and pretended to be asleep. The footsteps stopped right next to my head. I could hear someone breathing above me. A second later, I felt the coldness of metal pressing against my throat. My breathing picked up as Rhea lowered her mouth to my ear and whispered,
You weren't supposed to find out.
The lights flickered back on, and I screamed. Rhea was standing over my bed, holding a kitchen knife. Her face was blank, and her eyes were wide and dilated. My shrills seemed to snap her out of the trance. She looked down at her hand and started screaming. She dropped the knife and backed against the wall. She was crying and asking what happened. Why was she holding that? Why was I looking at her like that? She genuinely didn't remember standing over me with a knife at my throat. The RA heard the screams and came running with campus security. They took statements from both of us. Rhea was hysterical. She kept saying she didn't know what happened, that she'd been asleep, and then the lights came on and she had a knife in her hand. They moved me to a different room that night. Rhea was taken to the campus counseling center and then to the hospital. I found out later she'd been diagnosed with dissociative identity disorder when she was 15, had been in treatment, but stopped medication when she started college. The other personality had been there the whole time, and it was the one who wrote the notes, moved my things, and saw me as a threat. And that night, during the blackout, it had taken control completely. They sent Rhea back a day later. Her folks withdrew her from school to ensure she got proper treatment. I graduated and never saw her again. Throughout my college years, I took up part-time gigs and lived in a single dorm room that cost more than I could afford, because I couldn't share space with someone else. Can't trust that the person I go to bed with is the same person who will be there when I wake up. I know now that people can have whole other versions of themselves living inside them that write in different handwriting and speak in different voices and hold knives in the dark. I wonder what would have happened if the power hadn't come back on when it did, if those lights had stayed off for another 30 seconds, if Rhea's other self had finished what it started. I'm grateful I never had to find out. When I was a junior, there was a senior named Tyler Brennan, who was also the lacrosse captain. I'd been crushing on him for 2 years, and my friends kept saying he was definitely into me. I believed them. That Saturday, there was a huge party at a house near Whatcom Falls Park, right on the edge of town. Tyler was supposed to be there. But my parents wouldn't let me go out. So I climbed out my window at midnight and snuck out. By the time I arrived, the house was packed and the music was thumping loudly. I saw Tyler by the pavement, laughing at something his friend had said. I spent the next hour working up the courage to say hi to him. He was nice and offered me a drink. We talked for 5 minutes before his friend called him over. "Hey, I'll be right back," he said. After half an hour had passed and he still hadn't returned, I started looking for him. Someone told me they saw him go upstairs, So I went up and found him in a bedroom, making out with Jessica Martinez, one of the popular girls. They were so lost in each other that they didn't even notice me. It felt like my heart was being ripped open. I walked out without saying goodbye to anyone. I was crying, feeling stupid for ever believing someone like Tyler would be interested in me. I kept walking, heedless of the turns I was taking. When I finally looked up, I was in Whatcom Falls Park. The park was dark and empty. Fog had rolled in so thick that everything looked like a dream or a nightmare. The pain in my chest was still intense. Without thinking, I walked deeper into the fog, following the paths with no one else around. After about 15 minutes, I realized how reckless I was being. I was alone at night in a deserted park. I looked around and felt chills down my spine. Slightly shaky, I pulled out my phone and called my brother Mason. He was home from college for the weekend and answered on the second ring. Delaney? It's 1 a.m. Where are you?
The Whatcom Falls. Can you come get me?
I said through hiccups. Jesus. Stay put. I'll be there in 10 minutes. I sat down on a bench near the main path and waited. The fog was getting thicker, and I could barely see 5 feet ahead. All of a sudden, I heard leaves crunching behind the bench.
Mason?
I stood up, turned around, and gasped. A man was crouched behind the bench, staring at me. I could hardly make out his face, but as he slowly stood up, I could see his twinkling eyes. He flashed his teeth, making a slurping sound.
Hey there.
He sang, chuckling. I backed up.
I'm waiting for someone.
That's okay. I can wait with you. He stepped closer. I could see his face now. It was wrinkly and so hollow. I could count his bones. What's a pretty young thing like you doing out here all alone?
I'm not alone. My brother is coming. He'll be here any second.
The man chuckled.
Sure he is. What's your name, sweetie?
Ignoring him, I started walking toward the exit, fast.
Come on, don't be rude. I'm just being friendly.
He followed.
How old are you? You look young. 16? 17?
I didn't answer and walked faster. The fog was thick, and I could barely see the path.
You shouldn't be out here all alone, you know. Where do you live?
My heart was racing. I could hear him behind me, could sense he was close. But when I glanced back, he disappeared into the fog, only to reappear right next to me. I screamed and jumped away. He laughed and vanished back into the fog.
This is fun.
His voice came from somewhere and everywhere at once.
You're fun.
I ran flat out toward where I thought the exit was. The fog made everything confusing, and I got turned around and lost. I saw the gate, the park entrance, and relief flooded through me. The man stepped in front of it, blocking my way. He wasn't smiling anymore.
Where are you going?
He moved closer.
We were just starting to get to know each other.
I backed up and hit a tree. Sweat glistened on my palms as he kept coming closer.
Please leave me alone.
He stopped inches from me and leaned in close. I could smell cigarettes. His eyes were dark and empty.
If I kill you right now,
he whispered,
no one would even know. You'd just disappear. Another missing girl. Happens all the time.
I couldn't breathe or move. Tears rolled down my cheeks, and I was shaking. Delaney! Suddenly, Mason called out from outside the gate. The man's head snapped toward the sound. Delaney, where are you? My brother appeared through the fog. He was 20 years old and built from playing college football. The man looked at him, then back at me. He grinned and started backing up. We'll pick this up next time, he whispered before he turned and disappeared into the fog. Delaney! Mason saw me and ran over. Are you okay? What happened? I collapsed and started sobbing. I couldn't talk and just held on to him while everything came out. Mason called the police, and they searched the park, but found nothing. They took my statement with a description of the man, what he said, and what he did. They added it to their files and told me to be careful. I'm starting college this year, far from Bellingham and that park. But I still think about that night and how close I came. About what would have happened if Mason had been 5 minutes later, or if I hadn't called him, or if the man had decided not to wait. How many girls did it probably happen to, and how many didn't have a big brother to save them? I went to college in Madison, Wisconsin. I lived in the freshman dorms my first year, then got a university-owned housing apartment with my roommate, Marcus, for my sophomore year. Marcus was quiet and kept to himself mostly. He was a computer science major who spent a lot of time online. We were just two guys splitting rent. One night, I was messing around on my laptop and going down internet rabbit holes. I clicked through some dark web forums and found this website, which looked like a cooking blog. It had a black background and a fancy font. The header said exclusive recipes, with photos of plated dishes that looked gourmet and had a professional presentation. I started reading the recipes. The first few seemed normal, until I noticed the protein listings. Instead of chicken or beef, it cited meat, with specific preparation notes. For younger subjects, marinate 12 to 24 hours. The texture is more tender. For mature subjects, slow cooking is recommended. The more I read, the more I felt my knees tremble. Female subjects, ages 20 to 30, yield the most flavorful cuts. Male subjects require additional tenderizing. For subjects under 18, seasoning should be minimal to preserve natural sweetness. It was detailed and clinical, with instructions on butchering, which body parts had the best texture, how to remove bones, cooking temperatures, and plating suggestions. This was a site with cannibal recipes. Marcus walked in and dropped his backpack. "Yo, what you looking at?" "Dude, check this out. It's so cracked up." I turned my laptop toward him. He leaned over and started reading. His face went pale in seconds. Jesus Christ. Right? It's gotta be fake, though. Maybe someone created this just to spook people. Marcus didn't say anything. He kept reading and scrolling through recipes, and his expression turned weird, as if he were in a trance. "Marcus?" He blinked. "Yeah, that's disturbing. I'm gonna go to bed. Night." He went to his room and closed the door. I closed the laptop, feeling gross, and tried to forget about it. Over the next few days, Marcus changed. He'd always been quiet, but now he was distant and distracted. I'd catch him staring at people on campus. When I asked if he was okay, he'd snap out of it and say he was fine. The following week, multiple girls filed formal complaints against Marcus. This girl, Emma, from our building, reported to the campus security that Marcus had been following her everywhere she went. They gave him a warning and told him to stay away from her. But it didn't stop. Another girl named Sophia said Marcus had cornered her in the laundry room and asked how much she weighed and if she had any diseases. When she tried to leave, he blocked the door and kept asking questions. The college board got involved and called Marcus in and threatened suspension if he didn't stop harassing women. I confronted him. "Dude, what the hell? Why are you being creepy?" "I'm not. I'm just curious." He went to his room and locked the door. A week later, there was a frat party. I went, but Marcus said he was staying home. I didn't bother him. I got back at around 2 a.m., tipsy and tired. My key wouldn't work because the door was locked from inside with the deadbolt. I knocked. "Marcus, open up!" He didn't answer. I knocked louder and put my ear to the door. My whole body just seized up. Muffled crying was coming through, followed by a scream of a woman that got cut short. My blood went cold and my heart started hammering. I pounded on the door with both fists. "Marcus, what's going on?" He wouldn't answer, so I ran downstairs and found a security guard doing rounds. I told him someone was in my apartment and was screaming. He followed me up and knocked. When nobody answered, he radioed for backup, and another guard showed up with keys. They opened the door. The living room was empty, and Marcus's bedroom door was closed. They knocked. When he didn't open, they broke it down. A girl was in the corner, tied up with extension cords and duct tape over her mouth. Her face was bruised, and she was crying. I recognized her. It was Sophia, the girl from the laundry room. Security untied her and called the police. She was shaking and could barely talk. She said Marcus had grabbed her outside the library and dragged her to our apartment, where he tied her up and hit her when she struggled. "Where is he?" the guard asked.
He left. Said he'd be back after getting supplies.
The police arrived with more questions, and Sophia was taken to the hospital. We waited until Marcus showed up. He was carrying shopping bags from the hardware and grocery store. When he saw the cops, the security guards, and everyone standing outside our apartment, his face went white as a sheet, and he bolted. The police chased him and caught him 3 blocks away. When they searched the bags, they found a meat cleaver, heavy-duty plastic sheeting, industrial cleaning supplies, zip ties, spices, marinade ingredients, and fresh vegetables. During questioning, Marcus admitted that the website had triggered an obsession in him. He wanted to know what human meat tasted like. He'd been planning it for weeks. Stalking the girls was part of the process. Sophia was his target. He'd planned to butcher her and cook her meat that night while I was at the party. If I hadn't come home early, and if I hadn't heard her scream, he would have done it. Marcus is in prison now, with a 25-year minimum. Sophia's in therapy, and I moved out of the apartment the next day. I can't even look at the building. I've graduated and live in Chicago now, but I still think about that website to try to figure out my role in the whole mess. If I hadn't shown it to him, would any of it ever have happened? It makes me wonder how many other people made the same mistake I did. How many have found that site, and how many others got the same ideas Marcus did. How many of them actually followed through and were really successful. As a sophomore at the University of Michigan, I resided in the South Quad dorms, which featured a shared bathroom down the hall and walls that were barely thick enough to provide privacy. It was late October, and the rain was absolutely pouring all evening. Being bored, I was mindlessly surfing the weirdest parts of the internet on my laptop, and somehow ended up stumbling across this website. I don't even remember how I got there. I probably clicked through some weird Reddit link about internet mysteries or something. The page loaded slowly with a black background and white text in a simple layout that looked like it was made in the 90s. The headliner was titled, "Roleplay Costumes, Authentic Selection." I figured it was some cosplay site with Halloween stuff or maybe vintage clothing. But when the images finally loaded, something felt off. The clothes weren't costumes at all. They were normal, everyday clothes, like a blue polo shirt that looked like something from Old Navy, regular jeans with a plain belt and a floral sundress. It seemed to be regular stuff you'd see at Target or Walmart. I was confused, thinking, why would anyone buy these normal clothes for cosplay? Then, I noticed brownish stains on the clothes. The spots seemed faded, like someone had scrubbed them over and over but couldn't get them off. The fabric looked worn and stretched at the seams, having been used hard. I scrolled to the very end but couldn't find any description, price, or size lists. I kept scrolling anyway. Something about it was hypnotic in a sick way. I discovered the drop-down menu at the top reading Age Group. The options listed were 18 to 25, 26 to 35, 36 to 50, and 50 plus. And at the bottom was 5 to 10. My stomach dropped. I clicked it before my brain could tell me not to. In seconds, images of children's clothes appeared. There were tiny shirts with cartoon characters, little princess dresses with lace trim, small jeans with elastic waistbands and dinosaur patches, and kids' shoes with Velcro straps. All of them had those same brownish stains scattered across the fabric, worn thin and faded from washing. One photo showed a pink shirt with Dora the Explorer, smiling on the front. The collar was stretched out, with dark stains around the neck and shoulders. The description box beneath read, She passed in sleep, didn't struggle much. I felt sick and closed the laptop. The daunting realization that I just found a site that sells dead people's clothes or maybe murder victims for sale. I sat there in the dark, listening to the rain hit my window. I didn't realize how much time had passed until a loud knock made me jump. I called out, asking who it was, but instead of receiving answers, another knock echoed in response. My heart started hammering in my chest, and I tried to keep my calm. "Who is it?" Still, no answer. But this time, the knocking stopped. I walked to the door and put my eye to the peephole. Outside, the hallway was empty, with fluorescent lights buzzing. I tried changing angles, but couldn't spot anyone. I waited for a few seconds before retreating to my bed. Just as I lay down, the knocking came back, and this time it got way more aggressive. Whoever was knocking had no hesitation in breaking down the door. "Stop it! I'm calling security!" The knocking grew more aggressive. Along with thumping the door, the man on the other side started kicking it as well. I couldn't muster up the courage to check through the peephole. Instead, I grabbed my phone, dialed campus security, and put it on speaker. "Someone's at my door and they won't stop knocking. South Quad, room..." I paused and warned the intruder that the security guy would be on his way soon. Suddenly, the knocking stopped again. Nothing happened for a minute. No knocking, no kicking. It was as if I were alone again. I disconnected the call and sat down on the bed, drenched in sweat and panting in fear. Just when I thought it was over, a yellow piece of paper slid under my door. I could hear loud retreating footsteps, like someone was running down the hallway. It got fainter and fainter until it vanished entirely. I waited 5 more minutes before opening the door with my phone in one hand and a ready-to-run stance. The hallway was empty, except for that yellow paper on the floor. I picked it up. It was a sticky note with 4 words written in black marker. "How old are you?" My hands started shaking. I just stared at those words. Campus security showed up 10 minutes later and searched the floor and checked the security cameras. The footage showed a tall guy dressed in a dark red robe knocking and kicking on my door. His face was covered by the hood of the robe. They asked about the note, and I showed them and explained the website. I tried to pull it up on my laptop, but the page was gone, with a 404 error. The security guy took the note and said they'd investigate, and told me to call if anything else happened. I didn't sleep, and kept checking the peephole and watching my door. The rain eventually stopped, but I barely noticed. The next morning, I tried finding the website again. I searched every variation of the name and checked my browsing history, but found nothing. It was as if it had been completely scrubbed. I'm in my junior year, living in a different dorm with a different roommate. The man was never seen around campus that night, but I still think about that website with those stained clothes and the children's section. And I think about whoever was standing outside my door that night. They knew I'd been looking and wanted me to know they knew. It shakes me up to this day when I try and make sense of how that person found my location so quickly, just because I clicked on a mysterious link leading to a horrifying website. The internet is becoming a very dark place these days, and no one is safe. I live in Seattle, Washington, in the Capitol Hill neighborhood, where the bars stay open late and the fog rolls in thick off Puget Sound. That night in November, I'd been at my buddy Tyler's place, drinking and playing poker. We'd had too much whiskey and beer, and it proved to be a bad combination that made my head spin. I left around 2 a.m. I should have called an Uber, and that would have been smart, but I was only 6 blocks from home and broke from losing at cards and stupid from alcohol. I figured I could walk it. Outside, the fog was insane, the thickest I'd ever seen in 10 years living here. You couldn't see 5 feet ahead of you. Streetlights just glowed orange through the gray, like dim underwater lights. Everything was muffled and dead quiet, except for my footsteps echoing weirdly. I was halfway home when I heard the whistling. It was some old tune I didn't recognize, coming from behind me. I thought maybe someone else was walking home, but when I stopped to check, I couldn't really spot anyone, and the whistling stopped right when I did. As soon as I started walking again, the whistling started up too. Even with all the haze, I could tell it was perfectly in sync with my footsteps. "Hello?" I called out, but my voice got swallowed by the fog. I pulled out my phone and used the flashlight and pointed it behind me. All I could see was a gray wall of nothing. The whistling continued with the same tune, over and over. It was getting closer. I walked faster, and the whistling matched my pace. My heart started hammering in my chest. I felt sobered up and sweaty. After about 5 minutes, I hit a clearing. It was one of those intersections with a working streetlight. The fog was thinner there, and I could see maybe 15 feet in each direction. My steps halted. I squinted in the dark and saw her. The woman was some 8 feet tall and impossibly thin. She was standing in the darker part where the streetlight barely reached, perfectly still. My hands started shaking as I watched the fog literally passing through her body like she wasn't solid. Suddenly, she slowly started walking toward the light, and her face came into view. I nearly screamed and fainted at the sight. Her eyes were wide, with pupils tiny like pinpricks in white marbles. Her face was completely blank, devoid of expression or emotion. She was only staring straight ahead without blinking. My eyes fell on her hands hanging at her sides. They were covered in blood that was dripping all over the sidewalk in heavy drops. I looked back at her face. She was still staring. My gut told me to bolt, but the smarter part of my brain was like, "Nope, don't run from predators, and definitely don't let them see you sweat." I started walking at a normal pace, with my heart hammering and hands shaking, pretending everything was fine. The whistling started again behind me. It was closer now. I didn't look back and just kept walking, with one foot in front of the other. As the fog swallowed me back into the gray, the whistling got louder. She was following, and I could hear her footsteps now, heavy and dragging slightly. All of a sudden, the whistling cut out, and my legs just froze up like they had a mind of their own. I could feel this heavy, ragged breathing right next to my left ear. I turned my head super slowly, terrified of what I was going to see. And there she was, right behind me, just inches away, so close I could have reached out and touched her. But instead of a head, her neck was sliced clean off, like someone had taken a sword or an axe and chopped it. The whistling started up again, coming from down low, near the ground. I slowly glanced down, dreading what I was going to see. She was holding her own severed head like a basketball, its bloody hands grinning widely up at me with unblinking eyes, still whistling that awful tune. I couldn't believe what I was seeing. It felt like I was about to faint. I screamed at the top of my lungs and sprinted at full speed through the fog. I couldn't see where I was going, but it didn't matter. I just had to get away. I could hear her dragging footsteps right behind me. She was picking up speed. Her whistling was turning into a high-pitched laugh that I felt in my bones. I hit my street and recognized the houses. I fumbled for my keys, and my hands were shaking so bad I dropped them. I picked them up and got the door open. I slammed it behind me and locked it with the deadbolt and chain. I collapsed on the floor, breathing hard and covered in sweat. The whistling was right outside my door. I could still hear the same tune over and over. It maybe lasted 10 minutes before the creepy silence fell. I crawled to the window and looked out through the blinds. The fog was still thick, but nothing was there except for an empty street. I got sick that night with a fever that spiked to 104. Throughout the night, I was hallucinating and seeing her in my room with that headless body and a smiling severed head. The fever broke after 3 days, but I stayed in bed for 2 weeks. I couldn't eat or sleep without seeing her. It's been years. I still live in Seattle, but I've quit drinking and stopped walking home alone at night. I take Ubers and cabs, even though I really can't afford it. And when that thick fog rolls in, I stay indoors, lock up, and pull the blinds shut. Because sometimes, late at night, I still hear the tune and giggles coming from somewhere in the fog. And I know she's still out there, roaming the streets, looking for the next person to follow home. It was supposed to be my last week of summer up in Maine. My best friend Claire and I decided to take my dad's little houseboat out on Lake Sebago. It was only a tiny fishing houseboat with a motor and some benches, but Dad had been bugging me to use it, so Claire and I figured we'd spend a night fishing under the stars. We grabbed some snacks, drinks, and gear and pulled away from the dock around 8 p.m., just as the sun was going down. We wanted to get way out from the shore, away from the other boats and people, to find a chill spot to hang out. We cruised for about half an hour until we were right in the middle of the lake. Beneath us, the water was flat like glass. You could see the trees on the shore, but they were pretty far off. We dropped the anchor and set up our little lanterns. It was super peaceful, with the water barely hitting the boat and crickets chirping from the distant shore. We fished for a while, but hardly caught anything. Around midnight, we just left our poles hanging and took a quick break to chat and eat. All of a sudden, Claire perked up, as if she sensed something.
Babe? You good?
I asked. She shook her head and pointed a finger toward the shore. I squinted into the dark. At first, all I saw were trees swaying. I blinked and focused. This time, I noticed a guy standing right at the edge of the woods, totally still. We were pretty far from the shore, but I could still make out his silhouette.
What's he doing?
I asked. Claire shook her head. We both kept staring, waiting to see what his next move would be. Slowly, he brought up his arm and waved. The sandwich I had a second ago churned in my stomach. Why would someone be standing alone in the woods at midnight, waving at a stranger's boat?
Hello?
I called out across the water.
Do you need help?
The guy didn't say anything, just slowly shook his head, but he didn't leave either. He simply stood there, all still, watching us.
This is creepy. Yeah. Let's just ignore him. Maybe he'll leave.
We turned back to our fishing rods and tried to act normal, but we kept glancing back at the shore.
He's still there.
Claire sounded scared now. My heart started pounding. He was in the same position with the same stillness, like a statue.
Maybe we should head back.
Claire nodded. We started to haul up the anchor. Suddenly, a loud splash broke the silence. We both whipped our heads around toward the shore, only to find the man had vanished and the tree line was deserted.
Where did he go?
I scanned the shoreline and couldn't see him anywhere.
I don't know. Maybe he just left.
Before we could even figure out what was happening, his head popped out of the lake. He was way closer than he should have been.
Oh my god!
The man was swimming towards us. His eyes were locked on our boat, and his arms were cutting through the water fast.
Start the motor!
Claire cried. I fumbled with the keys. My hands were shaking so bad I could barely hold them. The man was getting closer. I could hear him breathing with heavy gasps as he swam. I turned the key, and the motor sputtered and died.
No, no, no!
I cried and turned it again. It sputtered. The man was maybe 20 feet away now. Claire grabbed a paddle and shoved the boat backward away from him.
Come on!
I turned the key again, and the motor roared to life. I slammed the throttle forward, and the boat lurched. The man's hand reached out. His fingers almost touched the hull, but we pulled away in a nickel of time, and the boat sped across the dark water. We didn't even glance behind us until we hit the dock. My heart was hammering so hard I seriously thought I was going to pass out. Claire was white-knuckling the side of the boat. Neither of us said a word. We were both totally shaking and breathing like crazy. When we finally got to the dock, we didn't even bother tying up the boat properly. We just bailed, sprinted to my car, jumped in, and locked the doors.
What the hell was that?
Her voice was shaking.
I don't know. The guy was swimming to get us. He was in the water the whole time. How did he get that close that fast?
I didn't have an answer. The shore had been at least 100 yards away. There's no way he could have swum that distance in the few seconds we weren't looking, unless he'd already been in the water closer to us and waiting. We sat in my car for a long time, trying to calm down. Eventually, we drove back to my house. Neither of us slept that night, and we just sat up talking about what happened and trying to make sense of it. But we couldn't, because the truth was obvious. We were never alone out there. That man had been watching us and waiting, and when we tried to leave, he came for us. It has been nearly a year. I haven't been back to that lake since. My dad still asks me to take the boat out, and I always turn him down. I haven't told him, but I guess he has sensed that something bad has happened. Claire and I don't talk about that night anymore, but sometimes I think about it, and each time I shudder at the thought of how it could have ended, how close his hand came to touching the boat, and if he had, what would have happened if the motor hadn't started. My house in Detroit never felt like a home. It was just a place where broken people lived together and fought at every chance they got. My dad drank until he couldn't stand, and my mom took pills until she couldn't feel. I was 16, which meant I was too old to believe things would get better one day, and too young to leave. Most nights, I'd lock myself in my room and disappear into the internet, where nobody could hurt me. That's how I found the chat room on some dark web forum. It was anonymous, with people talking about their shitty lives. Suddenly, a text pinged my DM from someone with the username @Susie_22. She told me she was 22 and stuck in a bad relationship. Her boyfriend made her feel worthless. I lied. I was 23 with the name Alex and wanted to be seen, too. Our conversations became everything. She was the only person who understood me and made me feel wanted. After a few weeks, Susie said she wished she'd met someone like me who cared. She suggested we meet and see if we connected in real life. I agreed. She told me to meet her at the bus stop on Gratoit Avenue tomorrow night at 8 p.m. The next evening, my parents were fighting and screaming as usual. My mom was crying and my dad was yelling. I barely noticed and just waited for them to retreat. Thunder was rolling in with a storm coming. I put on my hood, left through the back door, and walked to Gratoit in the downpour. The bus stop was empty, with a dim streetlight flickering. I stood there, getting soaked, and checked my phone every 30 seconds. 10 minutes later, I saw her walking toward me, with heels clicking on wet pavement. Even from a distance, I could tell she was older than 22. But I had lied too, so I couldn't actually complain. As she walked closer, I ducked my face under my hoodie. I thought I'd look at her after I told her the truth. She walked up a few feet without saying anything and stopped.
Alex?
She whispered. My heart started pounding in my chest. Susie? She nodded without turning.
Let's walk.
I kept my head down with my hoodie pulled up and my hands in my pockets. Rain was dripping off the fabric. We walked side by side, but instead of feeling giddy or excited, I felt creeped out. Something about Susie felt wrong. The silence was weird. Online, she was always chatty and warm, but in person, she seemed distant and uncomfortable. You're quiet.
So are you.
Her voice sounded strained.
You sound different than I expected.
Yeah, I guess I should tell you something. I took a breath. I'm not actually 23. I'm 16. My real name's Vincent. She stopped walking and stood completely still.
Vincent?
Yeah, Vincent Carmichael. I looked up and pulled my hoodie down. Rain was hitting my face, and she was staring at me with her face pale, eyes wide, and mouth open, like she'd been punched in the gut. Mom? She screamed. covered her mouth and stepped backward.
Oh, no. This isn't... It can't be.
She was shaking her head. "You're Susie?" My voice came out strangled. "You're the one I've been..." We stood there in the rain, staring at each other. For a second, neither of us moved as the realization came crashing down. All those late-night conversations and everything we told each other were just a mother and son looking for escape. Both of us were so desperate to feel something that we'd poured our hearts out to strangers online.
I need to go. I can't look at you right now.
"Mom, wait!" But she had already turned and ran down the street, with heels splashing through puddles. I called after her, but she didn't stop and disappeared around a corner. I stood there in the rain for an hour. I couldn't move or think. Every one of our conversations kept replaying in my head. When I finally went home, the house was dark. Dad was passed out in the garage, and Mom's bedroom door was open, but her bed was empty. She never came home. I waited days and checked her room, her phone, and everything. I called her cell, but it went straight to voicemail. Dad filed a missing persons report on day 3. Cops searched and found nothing. She just vanished. 2 weeks later, Dad got hit by a drunk driver coming home from a bar. He was dead on impact. The irony wasn't lost on anyone. I'm 18 now and living with my aunt in Lansing. Still in Michigan, but far enough from Detroit that I don't see the old house or walk past the bus stop. The police never found Mom. The case is still open, but nobody's really looking anymore. She's just another missing person who walked away from her life. But I know the truth. I know why she left. She couldn't live in a house with the son she'd unknowingly told everything to. The son who'd become her emotional support and her refuge. We were both so broken and so desperate to connect with anyone that we found each other in the worst possible way. Sometimes, I wonder if she's okay, and if she started over somewhere, if she thinks about that night, if she remembers all the things we told each other, and all the secrets we shared, and all the pain we confessed. And I wonder if she knows that I understood, and that I didn't judge her. I just wish she'd come home. But she won't, because looking at me means facing what we became